Welcome to my channel, guys. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Chapter 31. Chapter 31. Here's the winner. All the prisoners, both regular and mutant, showed expressions of shock. They had been discussing and betting on when prisoner 37 would be caught. Most believed he would be apprehended within a day or two. But now, they were informed that the very person they had been gossiping about, the one they were eagerly anticipating to be captured, not only escaped but also killed a group of people chasing him? That strong? How could he be that strong? Nearly 100 prisoners found it hard to believe and felt incredulous. At this moment, a prisoner named Claude shouted, "You must be joking. Does 37 have that kind of power? Are you messing with us? Even I, number 20, wouldn't dare claim I could kill several armed guys." The prisoners all nodded in agreement, feeling that Claude's words made sense. In an instant, many skeptical eyes turned to the person who had revealed the news. Even the freckled young man who had spoken to Syd before now found it hard to believe what he was hearing. If you're going to lie, at least make it believable. Feeling the doubts, the informant, Jeffrey, became anxious and said, "Damn it, I swear I'm not lying." He explained, "I heard that number 37 has more than 5 mutant abilities, which allowed him to kill those pursuers." As soon as he finished speaking, the room fell silent, and everyone showed expressions of disbelief. At this moment, they thought Jeffrey must have lost his mind to say something so outrageous. More than 5 abilities? How could that be possible? It's not just the regular prisoners who didn't believe it. Even the mutants scoffed, thinking it was impossible. How could someone have more than 5 abilities? Is that even a mutant? Mutants wondered why someone among them would be so special. Their disbelief didn't last long, as it was soon broken by another prisoner who had asked a friendly guard and received the same answer. Everyone was stunned. At the same time, they felt envy and jealousy. However, this feeling didn't last long and was soon replaced by schadenfreude and pity as another piece of news spread. Numbers 1 and 5, 2 monsters in special confinement and severely brainwashed, were being sent to capture number 37? Number 37 is done for. Those 2 are monsters. No one can beat them. Number 5 is unkillable. Even if you smash his head, he won't die. And number 1 is even worse. Mentioning number 1, most of the mutant prisoners showed expressions of disgust, both fearful and eager to kill him. During the pulse interference, they didn't want to experience the feeling of being powerless again. Knowing these 2 were sent, the prisoners started betting on how long it would take to capture number 37. Most bet 3 days, a few bet a week, but none thought he could escape. Some even believed that fragile number 37 would die at the hands of numbers 1 and 5. While the prisoners were busy discussing, far away in a remote corner, Syd Castell was diligently practicing Sunshine. Sunshine experience +1. Sunshine experience +1. Sunshine experience +1. With each practice session, the experience bar of Sunshine increased at a steady pace. As the sun began to set and the sky darkened, Syd stopped and looked at his status panel. Ability: Sunshine, 98 out of 100, level 1. Syd was initially pleased, then frowned. Just 2 more points? Sensing his internal energy, he hesitated. With his current energy, he could perform Sunshine 2 more times. But if I use it all, I'll have little light energy left. What if I encounter pursuers then? Syd shook his head, abandoning the idea of upgrading immediately. Since only 2 points were left, he could wait until the next morning. Thinking this, Syd felt a sense of anticipation. He left his current spot, looking for a hidden place to rest. The night passed quickly without any incidents. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Groggy, Syd was awakened by the sound of notifications. Feeling the energy filling his body, he eagerly began to practice the reduced version of Sunshine. Sunshine experience +1. Sunshine experience +1. With the final notification, Syd Castell immediately felt a change within himself. Ability: Sunshine, 0/500, level 2. A familiar warm current flowed through his body, causing an itchy sensation as if something was changing. When the feeling subsided, Syd found it easier to control the special sunlight of sunshine. Looking up at the bright sky, he focused his mind. In the next moment, the sunlight within a 20-meter radius slightly distorted. Syd quickly stopped the action. About 20 meters, huh? Syd felt a bit disappointed. Despite his slight disappointment, compared to the level 1 sunshine, he could accept this improvement. At level 1, he could barely cover half a room, but now, he could cover 20 meters. And this 20 meters was based on his current energy levels. The maximum range of level 2 sunshine wasn't just 20 meters. His limited energy was holding him back from fully using it. When the black particles upgrade to level 3 and my energy increases, how much further will the range of sunshine extend? Syd's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Compared to levels 1 and 2, level 3 represented a qualitative change, bringing even more energy. As for now, sensing the gradually replenishing energy in his body, Syd silently estimated. Besides sunshine, he could use his other abilities around 50 times. If it was level 1 abilities, he could even use them over 100 times, enough to fight intensely for 2 or 3 minutes. Thinking about his level 1 abilities, Syd glanced at his status panel and found none remained at level 1. They had all been upgraded to level 2. Noticing the sparse energy points on the panel, his attention turned to the unlocking progress. Unlocking progress 79%. I wonder if reaching 80% will grant me new abilities? Flight or something else? Syd felt a surge of anticipation. Would the abilities obtained later be even more powerful? With this in mind, he decided not to continue practicing his abilities for now, planning to focus on reaching 80% unlocking progress first. Under the sunlight, a series of notifications echoed in his ears. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. End of chapter. Chapter 32. Chapter 32. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. With each notification, the energy points on the panel steadily increased. After some time, the energy points reached over 900. Energy points. 904. Glancing at it, Syd tried adding them to the unlocking progress. With anticipation in his eyes, the unlocking progress jumped to 80%. Unlocking progress 80%. However, to his disappointment, he did not hear any notification about a new ability. Nothing? Syd frowned. It seems like it needs to reach 85%. Syd was certain. Then, glancing at the depleted energy points, he sighed regretfully. To reach 85%, it would probably take at least 8,000 more energy points, which would require a lot of time. After a moment, he decided to focus on upgrading his abilities first. He aimed to upgrade the black particles to level 3, increase his internal photon energy, and improve his overall strength. As for acquiring new abilities, that could be postponed for a while. Though he was somewhat eager to obtain new abilities in the future. According to his thinking, the abilities awakened later should be more unique. Perhaps, once the mimicry reaches 100%, it will result in unimaginable changes. Syd thought with anticipation. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Ability. Black particle, 60/500, level 2. While he was diligently practicing black particles, a group of people started targeting him. On the rooftop of a 6-story hotel. Boss, are we really going to take on this mission? That mutant seems hard to deal with. If we really go up against him, I'm afraid. A burly man in blue clothes with a scar on his face hesitated as he spoke to the muscular, broad-shouldered man with a fierce expression beside him. Albert glanced at his subordinate, Jack, with disdain. What are you afraid of? He's just a mutant, not a god. As long as we use sniper rifles from a distance, he won't even have time to react. Despite Albert's confidence, Jack still hesitated. At this moment, Albert's voice turned serious. Besides, We've already accepted the mission. If we don't complete it, we'll face punishment. Hearing this, Jack shuddered at the thought of failure's consequences. He quickly shook off his hesitation, his eyes filling with determination. Soon, greed appeared in his eyes. Recently, a bounty had appeared on the dark web. Anyone who killed the target on the bounty would receive $3 million. $3 million. With that money, both he and Albert could live in luxury for a long time. The target on the bounty was a 16-year-old boy named Kevin. Though the boy was young, for $3 million, they would send him to his death with little remorse. Furthermore, the boy was far from ordinary. The abilities described on the bounty alone were enough to make them shiver. In short, he was a mutant with terrifying killing abilities. Glancing at a hidden corner in the distance, Jack's eyes lit up with excitement. They had spent a lot of effort tracking down this boy. If not for the previous battle and some luck, they might never have found him. This kid is really good at hiding, making our boss work hard. Complaining for a moment, he then said excitedly, but it's almost over. Soon, it will be time to reap the rewards. Boss, you're right. He's just a mutant, not a god. As long as he gets shot, he'll die. With sniper rifles, they could easily kill the boy and claim the $3 million. The two men took out sniper rifle parts from their backpacks and began assembling them. As they were assembling, Jack, observing through a telescope, noticed something unusual. It seemed another group was targeting the boy. This couldn't be allowed. Boss, look, 3 people are coming. What do we do? They seem to be here to kill the boy too. If they get him first, Jack said anxiously. Albert paused, extending his strong arm to take the telescope from Jack and look at the distance. He saw 3 people approaching the boy's hiding place, their mouths moving as if shouting something. Albert frowned, then relaxed and smiled. Let them fight each other. When they're both exhausted, we'll take over. Hearing this, Jack's anxiety faded, replaced by excitement as he anticipated the scene. In the distance. Come out, we know you're in there. A thick voice echoed. Hearing the voice outside, Syd was startled and walked out from his hiding place, puzzled. Who are you? Seeing 2 white men and a black woman, Syd asked cautiously. The black woman, in her 30s with a fierce expression, stepped forward and glared at him. We're from the Mutant Underground Organization. Did you kill Carl Panna? Syd instantly understood everything. Before he could say anything, the black woman sneered. Don't deny it. We know it was you. You're a ruthless kid. Just come with us and face the leader's punishment. She suddenly opened her mouth, emitting an ear-piercing scream. Buzz. The sound wave, moving at the speed of sound, rushed toward Syd. Despite his quick reaction, he was momentarily caught off guard. The screeching sound echoed in his ears, making him momentarily deaf. All other sounds disappeared, leaving only the buzzing. Spatial shift experience +1. In less than a second, his figure blurred, instantly disappearing from the original spot and reappearing 10 meters away, escaping the sound waves' range. Where he had stood, the sound waves continued to crash, causing dust to rise as a wall shook and crumbled to the ground. The terror of the sound waves was evident. 10 meters away, Syd stumbled, covering his still buzzing, slightly bleeding ears, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Suddenly, he saw one of the white men emitting red light, his skin oozing magma-like substances, distorting the surrounding air with heat. The other man disappeared in a flash. Already on alert, Syd's instincts screamed danger, and he used spatial shift again without hesitation. Spatial shift experience +1. As he vanished, the spot where he had been was occupied by the white youth who had disappeared. The youth held a sharp dagger, poised to strike. Ran away? Kurban looked surprised. Speedster. Syd first frowned, then sighed in relief. End of chapter. Chapter 33. Chapter 33. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Luckily, this guy wasn't as fast as Quicksilver or the Flash. Otherwise, he might have taken me out in an instant. With his current strength, he wasn't yet at the level where he could easily handle speedsters. Even the progenitor mutant Apocalypse had no solution against Quicksilver's speed. If not for his self-healing ability and quick neural response, which allowed him to use his powers to lock Quicksilver's feet, he might have been killed. Of course, while this guy wasn't as fast as Quicksilver, he was still very fast, likely approaching the speed of sound, but just a bit slower when attacking. Syd kept a close eye on his opponent's movements. The moment the guy moved, he would use spatial shift. He wasn't idle though. These three had caught him off guard, but if he didn't fight back now, he'd be a fool. Did they think he was so easy to bully? The next second, his figure blurred and disappeared from his original spot. Spatial shift experience +1. Spatial shift experience +1. With 2 consecutive spatial shifts, he appeared beside the black woman. The moment he appeared, his fingers touched her chest. Divine Finger. Divine Finger experience +1. Bang! In an instant, the mirror space shattered, and the black woman screamed, a large hole appearing in her chest. The next second, she flew backward. At the same time, a shrill scream escaped her mouth, making everyone, including Syd, instinctively cover their ears. Sound waves swept around, causing buildings to tremble and collapse. In the chaos, the screams of innocent victims could be heard. Spatial shift experience +1. Spatial shift experience +1. Syd flashed to a distant spot, watching the destructive sound waves with a lingering fear. Dust filled the air, and various buildings collapsed. It was truly terrifying. He hadn't expected the black woman to unleash such power before dying. Was this a loss of control over her ability? Syd knew that mutants could be unreasonable at times. Normally weak, if they lost control, their danger level could skyrocket. This woman's ability was already formidable, and now that she had lost control, it made sense that she would explode with such power. Regardless, she was definitely dead. Without self-healing or defensive abilities, a single divine finger was enough to send her to the crematorium. In the distance. Watching this scene through binoculars, Jack and Albert instinctively swallowed. Damn, this was too terrifying. Seeing the sound waves wreak havoc in the distance, toppling houses and sending people flying with blood spurting, the two men shivered. If they had been on site, they would have been killed instantly. Mutants are indeed monsters. Jack thought in fear. Especially the boy who had killed a mutant with ease. He terrified them. Of course, the outcome of the battle was still uncertain. Although one person was dead, the other side had a speedster. If Syd made one mistake, he could die too. Inga! The two white men looked at the dying Inga on the wall and turned their furious eyes toward Syd. I'm going to kill you. Marco roared, his body emitting magma. In an instant, he hurled a large mass of magma. Syd watched the incoming magma with a calm expression, his figure flashing and disappearing from the spot. Spatial shift experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. 3 black particles appeared, flying towards Marco like bullets. Ah! Unable to dodge, Marco's arm was grazed by a black particle, instantly losing a chunk of flesh. Spatial shift experience +1. Seeing the speedster disappear, Syd immediately vanished from his spot. Spiritual light beam experience +1. Instead of attacking the speedster, the next second, a spiritual light beam erupted from beneath Marco's feet. With a scream, Marco flew backward, blood splattering. Marco! Cubbon's eyes turned red as he glared at Syd. You just wait. Cubbon's figure blurred and disappeared. Spatial shift experience +1. Syd appeared on the rooftop, surprised to find that the guy hadn't attacked but had chosen to leave. He's retreating? Surprised, Syd didn't chase after him. Not that he could catch him even if he tried. Even at full attention, he could only see the guy's afterimage. Without careful focus, he could easily lose sight of him, and spatial shift wouldn't help. Moreover, facing a speedster, Syd didn't dare get too close. Even during the battle, he had kept a safe distance, allowing time to react. If he got too close, even with spatial shift, he worried he might get killed in return. Unless he awakened self-healing abilities, he wouldn't be able to fight recklessly like Wolverine or Deadpool. Thinking this, Syd didn't let his guard down. His figure blurred and disappeared from the spot. Spatial shift experience +1. Spatial shift experience +1. In the distance. Seeing the mutant boy disappear, Jack put down the binoculars, swallowing nervously. Boss, are we still going after him? Looking at the chaotic battlefield in the distance, like it had been plowed by bombs, cold sweat broke out on his back. Albert gritted his teeth, saying, "What's there to fear? He's just a mutant. As long as he can't react." As he spoke, his voice weakened, clearly realizing the consequences if they failed to kill him instantly, and he fought back. "Let's go chase him." In the end, Albert couldn't resist the lure of $3 million. He called out to Jack, packed up, and ran in the direction the boy had left. As Syd and the two men left, alarm sounded in a lab base 10 kilometers away. "Hurry, we can't let that symbiote escape." A team of fully armed security guards rushed towards the corridor. Bang bang bang. Countless bullets rained down ahead. In front, a middle-aged man with a blank expression ran frantically, his agility more like a cheetah than a human. Thud, thud, thud. Bullets pierced flesh. "These damned humans." A hoarse, enraged voice emerged from the man's body. Amidst the whistling wind, faint complaints could be heard. "Weak carbon-based life forms. These humans are so frail. Isn't there anyone stronger? Are they all this fragile?" The sound of gunfire, accompanied by chaotic footsteps, echoed in the area. End of chapter. Chapter 34. Chapter 34. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Under the bright sunlight. Bang, bang, bang. Bullets whizzed through the air, aimed at the fleeing figure at the speed of sound. However, despite being hit multiple times, even in the head, they had no effect. The middle-aged man, enduring the gunfire, escaped from the base at a speed surpassing that of an ordinary person. "Oh shit!" Watching the middle-aged man gradually disappear, the armed guards looked grim, with some cursing under their breath. The Life Foundation was in an uproar, with vehicles speeding out to chase the escaping man. Half an hour later. Weak humans. Controlling the man riding the stolen motorcycle, Venom's hoarse voice was full of complaints. He could feel that this body was reaching its limit and would soon die. At that point, he would have to crawl out of this body. If he couldn't find a new host that could adapt to Earth's environment, he would soon perish. Not wanting to die, he quickly took action. His black, sludge-like body split into two parts, with the larger one taking up 90% and the smaller one taking up 10%. The motorcycle roared, the wind howling past. The larger part of Venom's body squirmed out of the middle-aged man's chest. Then, seizing the moment, leaped toward a strong man in his 30s or 40s walking on the sidewalk. "Oh hell, what is this?" Walking down the corridor, forced by his boss to go to the Life Foundation for an interview, Eddie saw a black mass flying towards him and cursed. Before he could brush off the sticky thing, it seeped into his skin and vanished. What the hell? Eddie Brock was shocked, feeling like he wanted to dissect himself. He searched his body but found nothing. As he panicked, a hoarse voice came from within him. "Shut up." Ignoring Eddie's stunned reaction, Venom marveled internally. "I don't think there's a better host than this one." After parasitizing this human, Venom was surprised to find that this body was highly compatible with him. He had never experienced such compatibility in all his parasitic endeavors on Earth. Previous human test subjects would die because they couldn't sustain him, their organs failing over time. But this guy, Eddie, had a body that greatly satisfied him, making him believe he couldn't find a better one. While Venom was pleased, Eddie was panicking. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man on the motorcycle continued to speed away. He was meant to divert the pursuers for Venom. He didn't care about the small part of Venom left in the man's body. That part would probably be found by the Life Foundation and locked in a lab. While Venom considered how to communicate with Eddie, the middle-aged man 2 kilometers away was surrounded by Life Foundation agents. Bang! 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 Bullets and tranquilizer darts rained down on him. Soon, the middle-aged man fell to the ground. "I got him," one of the black-suited men said into his walkie-talkie. "Bring him back," a voice replied excitedly. "Roger that." The black-suited men lifted the middle-aged man into a car and headed back to the Life Foundation. In their haste, they didn't notice a thumb-sized blob of black liquid seeping from the man's finger and rolling into a nearby sewer grate. In the dark sewer, Venom squirmed, feeling increasingly anxious. He knew that if he didn't find a host soon, this weak body would die. He didn't want to die. From the moment he separated, he became an independent entity, despite still being connected to the larger part. Quickly, he sensed something and leaped onto a gray rat. The rat's beady eyes glowed eerily as it swiftly scurried through the sewer. He needed to find a compatible host quickly. Damn you, you'll regret abandoning me. I'll make you regret it. While the situation with Venom caused chaos, several kilometers away, Syd was practicing black particles. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. After an hour of practice, Syd suddenly stopped. A notification abruptly appeared in his mind. Hidden in an unseen corner, a hunter is aiming at you, seemingly preparing to kill. Syd's face changed slightly, and he instinctively used spatial shift. Spatial shift experience +1. Appearing 10 meters away, he looked back at where he had been standing. Thud. A long bullet embedded itself deeply into the ground. Another sniper? Syd's face darkened. The next second, he followed the direction from which the bullet had come. 200 meters away was a 3-story building. Spatial shift experience +1. He disappeared from his spot again. By now, he had a good idea of where the sniper was located. As he moved towards the building, Jack and Albert, hiding inside, began to panic. What do we do, boss? He found us. Run! Albert didn't even bother with the sniper rifle, turning and bolting. Jack hesitated for a moment, then hurried after him. A few minutes later, they were sprinting down a dark corridor. Should be safe now, right? Looking around and seeing no one following, Jack sighed in relief. But just then, a figure appeared before them. Who are you? Who sent you to assassinate me? Syd asked coldly. As he spoke, he raised his right hand, black particles floating around it, ready to be fired at any moment. Wait, we'll talk. Panicking, Jack quickly said. We're assassins. We took a dark web contract to kill you. Dark web? Syd was taken aback. He was familiar with the dark web, having heard about it in his previous life. Beneath the surface internet lay the dark web, where illegal transactions often took place. This assassination was likely ordered by someone on the dark web and carried out by these unlucky hitmen. End of chapter. Chapter 35. Chapter 35. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Do you know anything about your employer? Syd asked with a frown. Jack shook his head. Syd pondered for a moment, quickly suspecting who might be behind this. The people from the experimental base? He didn't bother to think further. It could only be a few individuals, and he would have his chance to get back at them eventually. As he moved his fingers, ready to send a black particle into each of these two, a faint noise came from not far away. Syd turned to look, puzzled. He saw an orange cat meowing and approaching him. At first, he didn't pay much attention and was about to continue his action. But before he could make a move, the cat's unusual behavior caught his eye. A shadow flickered in the cat's yellow eyes, and a small blob of black liquid oozed from its forehead. In Syd's peripheral vision, he saw the black substance leap from the cat and land on his right hand. Syd was shocked at first, then quickly realized what it was. Venom? His mind raced, recalling what he knew about this thing. An alien organism, a symbiote, that needed to attach to other organisms to survive on Earth. Once bonded with a host, it could unleash incredible power. The most famous instance was when it attached to Spider-Man, forming a Venom suit that led to Peter's dark transformation. Of course, there were several versions of Venom, and he wasn't sure if this one was the same as the one that bonded with Spider-Man. But regardless, bonding with this thing wasn't all benefits. There were drawbacks too. Syd didn't dare take this lightly. Seeing Venom on his hand and even seeping into his arm, He panicked and instinctively drove his internal photon energy to counter it. Ah! A faint scream came from his arm as Venom was forced out by the burning light energy. Watching this from a distance, Jack and Albert were stunned. The Venom, burned by the photon energy, was equally shocked. Initially, it thought it had just found an ordinary human, but then, no? At first, it had a casual attitude, thinking it could use this boy's body for a while. But when it entered the boy's body, it was completely astonished. It felt an unprecedented power. This boy's body was different from ordinary people. Not only did his cells contain mysterious unknown factors, but his flesh also had a special energy attached to it. It had a sunny quality, giving Venom a warm feeling. Of course, that was before the boy activated his energy. Once activated, all Venom felt was a burning sensation, forcing it to leave his body. Even though it was only a brief fusion, Venom felt a comfort it had never experienced before. That feeling made it crave more. The sensation of being filled with power was intoxicating. Filled with urgency, Venom wanted to re-enter the boy's body. But before it could act, Syd frowned and spoke. Venom? Venom paused in surprise, its small head morphing and asking, "Human, how do you know my name? An alien life form?" Syd continued, "A symbiote? You?" Venom was both puzzled and shocked at having its origins exposed. It swore it didn't know this boy, and he shouldn't know about Venom or symbiotes. Nearby, Jack and Albert, still in shock, looked at the black liquid, hearing Syd's words. An alien life form. What the hell is going on in this world? They were in disbelief. "Human, how do you know so much? Who are you?" Venom asked in astonishment. Syd calmly replied, "I know more than just your name. I know a lot about symbiotes. But never mind how I know. Now, leave my body, or don't blame me for being rude." Venom, initially stunned by the information, quickly regained its composure, urgently saying, No, human, don't drive me away. I'm Venom. I'm a symbiote. Bond with me, human." Syd shook his head. Venom grew more desperate. "Please, together we'll be the strongest, the most powerful. No one can defeat us. We will become kings." "Stay away from me," Syd said, frowning, grabbing the sticky substance and throwing it far away. But as soon as he threw it, the substance wriggled back towards him like a desperate puppy. "No, don't abandon me, please, human," Venom pleaded, its tiny face full of desperation. End of chapter. Chapter 36. Chapter 36. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Watching the pleading Venom clinging to him like sticky candy, Syd felt a bit helpless. If this creature had shown aggression, he would have dealt with it immediately, but its groveling made it harder to handle. He temporarily shifted his attention and looked at Jack and Albert. No, don't kill us." Noticing Syd's gaze, Jack hurriedly begged for mercy. Syd glanced at their terrified faces but ignored their pleas. Since they had intended to kill him for the bounty, their deaths were their own fault. In the next second, with Jack and Albert looking on in terror and Venom in surprise, black waves surged in Syd's hand. Black particle experience +1. Black particle experience +1. 2 black particles shot out like bullets towards Jack and Albert. Alert, they dodged to the side, avoiding the first 2 particles. Black particle experience +1. No matter how much they tried to dodge, they couldn't escape the next 4 black particles and were struck in the chest. Blood flowed, and as he lay dying, Albert cursed, "You'll come to hell to find us soon enough. Killing us won't end it. Your bounty will keep rising, and stronger people will come after you. Hope you don't meet the top-ranked assassins, or else." Albert gave a bitter laugh before he stopped breathing, and Jack soon followed after uttering his own curses. Seeing them dead, Venom quickly spoke up, "Human, don't worry about their words. If you and I merge, everything can be solved. We can tear apart anyone in our way." Finally, his small black face was full of pleading. "Please, human, merge with me. We will be the strongest." Listening to Venom's incessant chatter, Syd felt a headache coming on. Eliminating it would be troublesome, and if he threw it away, it would likely come back. After a moment of thought, he decided to negotiate with Venom. Merging completely with you is not an option, Syd said slowly. Venom's black face filled with disappointment, but before he could continue pleading, Syd said something that surprised him. However, I can let you merge with my right hand. If you agree and can manage that. Syd looked calmly at Venom. He had thought this through. Venom wasn't entirely bad. There were obvious benefits to merging with it. If it was just his right arm, he could agree to that. As for a full-body merge, he outright rejected the idea. A complete merge meant Venom would be inside his body, which could cause trouble if it acted up. Moreover, a full merge meant Venom would have access to his brain, and without mental abilities, it might learn his memories, which Syd could not accept. But if it was just his right arm, any problems wouldn't be severe. Even if Venom tried something, his internal photon energy would alert him immediately. Venom would have to get past the photon energy first. I warn you, if you go beyond my right arm. Before Syd could finish his warning, Venom excitedly interrupted. Human, I agree. Venom's black liquid body immediately jumped onto Syd's right arm and quickly seeped in. Syd didn't feel much, only sensing something entering his arm and feeling a presence there. He had the sense that he could expel Venom at any time if he wanted to. Aside from that, there was no discomfort. Symbiotes are really special, Syd muttered to himself. While Syd was adjusting, Venom inside him was also exploring. It had only merged for a second or two before, but now, almost fully merged, it could feel the difference completely. Human, you are unique, powerful. I've never seen anything like you. Venom was filled with awe. If other humans were weak and fragile, this one was different, unique. The warm energy like sunlight, the mysterious unknown cells. All of it gave Venom unprecedented power. It felt stronger than ever. It felt full of energy, replenishing its depleted reserves rapidly. In its excitement, it instinctively tried to use its symbiote power to replicate the host's abilities. But something unexpected happened. Venom was shocked to find it couldn't replicate this host's mysterious cellular factors. Damn, I've never seen anything like this, Venom exclaimed. What was going on? Besides that, it discovered something unbelievable. These mysterious cells were actually eroding it. Threads of mysterious power appeared, slowly altering it. Venom was questioning its existence. It had always been the one to erode others, and now it was being eroded? Was it the symbiote, or was this boy the real symbiote? Venom's feelings fluctuated, but ultimately, it couldn't bear to leave this human's body. This host was too perfect, unlike any other it had ever encountered. Besides that, it unexpectedly discovered that although it couldn't clone the mysterious cellular factors, it could absorb sunlight. Syd's arm extended a black liquid tendril. As sunlight hit the tendril, it felt warm, and its depleted energy seemed to replenish. Venom was overjoyed. In its excitement, the tendril transformed into a small black head. This is amazing, Venom shouted in delight. Then, excitedly, it said, You are special, unlike any ordinary human. It's like you're not even the same species. I've never seen anything so. It became incoherent. Syd looked at it in surprise and asked, learning the general situation. Absorbing sunlight wasn't a big deal, probably due to the energy absorption ability. Mysterious factor in the cells? Syd instantly thought of sunshine. End of chapter. Chapter 37. Chapter 37. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Whether it was when he awakened sunshine or when it leveled up, Syd could always feel a warm current flowing through his body, likely altering his cells at that time. He wasn't surprised that Venom couldn't clone this. After all, sunshine was an Omega-level ability, and it was derived from mimicking this power. It was normal for Venom to have trouble with it. Venom's inability to sense the mimicry of this mysterious power from the start was also within Syd's expectations. If Venom had discovered something, that would have been surprising. After thinking it through, Syd looked at Venom's small black head and asked, What abilities do you have? Although he had some knowledge, he wanted to be sure to avoid any mistakes. Quickly, with Venom's explanation, he sorted out Venom's other abilities. In addition to shapeshifting, Venom could repair the host's damaged body. Venom's physical and extraordinary resistances were also very high. There were other abilities, such as allowing the host to breathe underwater. Syd focused on the shape-shifting and body repair abilities. He raised his right hand and tried to control Venom. In the next second, his right hand transformed from flesh to a black liquid, then solidified into a giant sword. With a thought, Syd changed the sword into a shield, and then into gloves and other forms. With a bang, his right hand, now in the shape of a hammer, smashed into the ground. After the loud noise, a small pit appeared on the ground. It's like the material turned into metal. Syd marveled. As for the body repair ability, he looked at his body but didn't dare to test it out. Moreover, with Venom only inhabiting my right hand, it can't repair other parts of my body. Syd shook his head. Of course, he wasn't going to let Venom fully merge with him either. While he was experimenting, Venom excitedly said, "Human, how about it? Pretty good, right? I'm the best. With you, it's even better. We're the strongest. No one can stop us." Syd smiled slightly. "The world isn't as simple as you think." Venom looked puzzled. Then, with a curious expression, Venom asked, "Human, is absorbing sunlight and shooting that black stuff your ability?" "You'll find out later. We need to leave here now. And call me Syd." Syd started walking away. "Syd, don't waste it. Let me eat those two humans' brains." With a slurp, Venom licked its sharp teeth, eyes longing as it stared at the two corpses. Shaking his head as he walked, Syd replied, "No." Even though it didn't involve his mouth, he still felt nauseated at the thought of brains entering his body. As they walked, Syd looked at Venom's small form, puzzled. "What's with your body? Why are you so small?" In all the Spider-Man and Eddie versions, Venom was never this small. It looked somewhat juvenile, much smaller in size. Venom paused and its black face turned fierce, angrily saying, "That damn bastard dared to abandon me. I'll definitely get revenge." Listening to its story, Syd understood what had happened and knew which version of Venom this was. The Life Foundation, huh? He frowned, thinking, has the plot changed? According to Venom's story, this was the plot of the movie Venom, Lethal Protector. The Life Foundation conducted space exploration and brought back several symbiotes from a meteorite, one of which was Venom. To complete the symbiosis experiments with humans, the Life Foundation's owner conducted a series of cruel human experiments. A journalist named Eddie Brock went to investigate and interview, and after a series of events, he took Venom from the lab and formed a perfect symbiosis. Faced with Eddie, who had taken the symbiote, the Life Foundation launched a series of pursuits. Syd frowned. From what Venom said, it wasn't Eddie who took Venom from the lab. Is this because of my influence? Syd pondered. Of course, the most important thing was that if the plot progressed as expected, the Life Foundation would likely launch a rocket to retrieve the meteorite containing millions of symbiotes. At that point, he shared this information with Venom, shocking it. "Syd, how do you know so much about the Life Foundation?" Not only about the Life Foundation, but this mysterious human seemed to know everything about symbiotes too. At this moment, Venom was deeply suspicious. What was going on? After thinking for a long time, its small head couldn't figure out why this human named Syd knew so much, and even seemed to predict the future. After a while, Venom suddenly said seriously, "We must stop them. We can't let the Life Foundation bring my fellow symbiotes to Earth." Syd looked at it, as if knowing everything, and said, "Are you afraid of them?" Venom quickly shook its head. "No, I just don't want Earth to fall into their hands." Besides, it glanced at Syd, its eyes filled with excitement and murderous intent. "Just the two of us are enough. We're the strongest. We don't need those guys getting in the way." Syd pondered for a moment. He was hesitant about going. If the plot progressed as expected, Eddie should successfully prevent the symbiote's arrival, with or without his involvement. What if my influence changes things? Syd wondered. He wasn't worried about people dying, but about the million symbiotes arriving on Earth, which could alter many plot developments, erasing his advantage of foresight. After thinking for a long time, he decided to check it out. Looking at Venom, he said, "You know where the Life Foundation is, right? Take me there." Venom's eyes lit up with excitement. As it guided Syd's right hand towards the Life Foundation, its face turned fierce. "Don't let me find you, or I'll make you pay." The guy it was talking about was, of course, the other half that abandoned it. "Just the two of us are the strongest." Venom's eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation, eager for the upcoming confrontation. End of chapter. Chapter 38. Chapter 38. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Syd followed Venom's directions as he walked. During this journey, he chose to walk in hidden areas as much as possible, not forgetting that he was still being hunted. Along the way, he couldn't help but notice how many thugs there were in America. He ended up collecting a few $100s in relief funds, and a black hoodie with a hood. With a black hood covering his head, he exuded a hint of mystery as he walked through the secluded streets. "Syd, why are you being so cautious? I think we should go all out instead of hiding like this." Venom communicated telepathically with Syd, its hoarse voice tinged with confusion. Syd shook his head. "Maybe when we get there, but for now, we need to stay hidden while traveling. There are people hunting me." With that, he ignored Venom's puzzled questions and focused on moving quickly. Occasionally, as the sunlight touched him, his energy points slowly increased. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. As Syd made his way to the Life Foundation, Eddie Brock was having a struggle with Venom. "Eddie, this is an illusion. It's not real. You're just feeling a little unwell." Walking down the street, Eddie tried to ignore the voice in his head, convincing himself it was a hallucination. Then, the strange voice in his mind spoke again. "Eddie Brock, stop pretending. You know it's all real." Ignoring Eddie's self-deception, Venom continued, "Human, listen to me. You should stay away from the Life Foundation. Don't go there." Unable to ignore the voice in his head, Eddie cursed, "Shit, it's my job." As he spoke, Eddie suddenly felt a wave of hunger. Swallowing, he looked at the people walking by, feeling an urge to devour their brains. He felt like he was going crazy, trying to ignore the impulse, thinking it was just the parasite affecting him. However, the more he ignored the hunger, the stronger it became. The voice in his head spoke again. "Human, stop. It's time to eat. See those delicious brains? Go and devour them." Eddie Brock clutched his head, trying to ignore the hunger, but he failed. To escape the thoughts of eating people's brains and the feeling of hunger, he rushed into a steakhouse and quickly ordered. Unable to wait, he grabbed food meant for others and started eating, causing chaos. People screamed. While Eddie was adjusting to the symbiote, the Life Foundation had realized they had been tricked by the symbiote. They were urgently checking all abnormalities along the escape route, trying to locate the fleeing symbiote. Security guards with communicators searched the streets. Soon, the commotion around Eddie Brock caught the attention of the guards. "Found an anomaly, checking it out." A black security guard reported into his communicator before entering the restaurant and approaching Eddie, who was gnawing on a live lobster from a tank. "Sir, please come with me." The guard, Thomas, politely requested. But Eddie, consumed by his hunger, ignored him and continued eating. Thomas's face darkened, and he reached out to grab Eddie, trying to take him away. Before he could touch Eddie, he was pushed back several steps by Eddie's right hand. Thomas's face grew more stern, and he instinctively reached for his baton to teach this uncooperative and suspicious person a lesson. As he raised his baton, Eddie's right hand, covered in black liquid, punched him hard in the chest. Bang! Amid the gasps of the onlookers, Thomas was sent flying several meters, crashing into a row of tables and chairs. Seeing this, Eddie, still somewhat conscious, hurriedly explained, "Oh, I didn't mean to. My hand, it's not listening." With the staff shouting, Eddie panicked and fled the restaurant. Struggling to his feet, Thomas urgently reported into his communicator, "Target found." While he was reporting, the fleeing Eddie was in a state of panic. "Coward, you should have eaten that guy." Venom's displeased voice echoed in his mind. Panicking, Eddie asked, "What are you?" "A parasite." He could no longer deceive himself. "Parasite? Venom repeated loudly, seemingly furious. You are the parasite. I am Venom, the great symbiote Venom. And you need to get out of here now. Those people will capture you and conduct inhumane experiments on you. Run. Eddie still hadn't accepted reality. Just as he was about to argue, four black-suited guards appeared ahead. Stop. Hands up. The four guards pointed their guns at him. Shit. Eddie instinctively turned and ran. Seeing him run, the guards immediately fired their tranquilizer guns. Bang! 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 Black tendrils emerged from Eddie's back, blocking the tranquilizer darts. Then, with a swift movement, the tendrils knocked the guns out of the guards' hands. The guards were stunned by what they saw. More guards surrounded Eddie, and in the ensuing chaos, Eddie displayed a series of astonishing abilities. He performed many inhuman actions and had a sense of danger that helped him avoid many attacks. The black tendrils easily knocked away enemies, and even the black liquid shifted into a venom suit covering him. As he charged through, guards screamed as they were sent flying. Some unlucky ones were grabbed by Venom, who then devoured their brains. Stop him. Don't let him escape. While the guards surrounded Eddie and Venom, the people at the Life Foundation were watching the footage in shock. In the conference room, Drake spread his arms, pointing at the screen, and exclaimed, "He merged with the symbiote, do you see?" Turning to the staff and researchers, he praised, "Did you see? They merged. Triss." He rushed to the communicator and urgently instructed the lead guard on the video, "Bring my new creature back." End of chapter. Chapter 39. Chapter 39. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. After giving his orders, Drake watched Eddie on the screen, showcasing his incredible combat abilities, and commented, "This is the perfect life form. Look at the perfection, the incredible strength, the incredible defense, and the incredible speed. I have never seen such a perfect life form. He has achieved a truly perfect symbiosis with the symbiote." Drake continued to praise. Among the dozen or so people watching the screen, some began to chime in. "Mr. Drake, you're right." A middle-aged man in a white coat agreed. "This man's compatibility with the symbiote is incredibly high, completely different from the failed experiments. This is the perfect symbiosis. I don't think we'll find a more perfect symbiote than this. We must bring this man back safely. We need the data from his body." Ralph's eyes gleamed with desire. No one understood better than these researchers how important this perfect symbiote was. He had never seen a more perfect symbiosis than this one. Previous human experiments had all resulted in immediate death, and even the rare survivors had rapidly deteriorating organs and soon died. None of them had displayed the inhuman transformations and power seen on the screen. Even the briefly surviving test subjects showed no more strength than ordinary people. Otherwise, they would have displayed their power and escaped the lab long ago instead of being confined for observation. The researchers around him nodded in agreement and amazement. While they marveled at Eddie's perfect life form, Eddie had already evaded his pursuers and returned home. Opening the fridge, he grabbed some raw meat and began to eat. As his hunger subsided, Eddie regained his clarity. "What did I do?" he said irritably. At that moment, there was a loud banging on his door. Bang! The door was kicked open. A group of black-suited guards rushed in, immediately firing their tranquilizer guns at him. Venom quickly emerged from Eddie's body, its black form shielding him from the darts. In the next second, the Venom suit covered Eddie. "Hey, wait, we can talk this out." Eddie tried to explain, but Venom, controlling his body, didn't stop. His right hand transformed into a black tendril, which lashed out at the guards. Grabbing one, Venom pulled him close and delivered a powerful punch with its black left hand. In an instant, the guard was knocked unconscious. Venom leaped into the crowd, knocking them out one by one like they were children. Thomas, the bald guard at the back, spoke into his walkie-talkie with fear. "We can't handle him. He's too strong." At the Life Foundation, watching the battle, Drake frowned and asked, "Is there any way?" A male researcher hesitated before stepping forward. "We can try sound waves." All eyes turned to him. The researcher explained, "Experiments show that symbiotes are highly sensitive to sound waves. which can cause them pain and separate them from their hosts. We can equip our men with sonic weapons to turn him back into an ordinary man. Drake frowned slightly, feeling a bit disappointed that his perfect life form had a flaw. Despite this, he quickly gave the order to prepare the sonic weapons. Retreat for now. Drake spoke into the communicator. Soon, the guards withdrew, leaving a confused Eddie. They left? Eddie said, puzzled. Venom emerged from his body, its large head looking fierce. Don't be complacent. They won't give up. We should leave here. Eddie's heart pounded, nearly making him weak at the knees from the sudden appearance of this creature. After a brief exchange, he accepted the reality of being hunted. He rummaged through his things, quickly gathering useful items to take with him. 10 minutes later, he ran downstairs, hopped on a motorcycle, and sped away from the Life Foundation. Unfortunately, he hadn't gone far before he was noticed by his pursuers. A distant gunshot rang out, and a bullet punctured his speeding motorcycle's tire. Eddie tumbled to the ground, sustaining multiple bruises and fractures. Thomas and his team slowly approached. With a smile, Thomas said, "You're quite a troublemaker, Eddie." Lying on the ground, Eddie looked panicked. "I was trying to please you." Thomas ignored him and prepared to fire more tranquilizer darts to immobilize him completely. But then, something that shocked both Thomas and Drake happened. Black liquid oozed from Eddie's body, quickly repairing the damage and even resetting his broken bones. Eddie stood up swiftly, the Venom suit covering him again. "Oh my God!" Thomas and his team were stunned. Watching the monitor, Drake exclaimed, "Incredible!" Thomas's team panicked and tried to shoot, but it was useless. Venom grabbed one guard and bit off his head in one gulp. "Hey, we can talk this out, Eddie." Facing the advancing Eddie, Thomas backed away, terrified. "Nothing to discuss, human." Venom grabbed him, examining him closely. Venom's long tongue licked Thomas's face, leaving a trail of saliva. Eyes, lungs, pancreas, all very tasty. Venom opened its toothy maw, about to swallow Thomas's head whole. But a distant gunshot interrupted it. Venom paused, turning to look at the shooter, its face growing fierce. Just as it was about to charge, a piercing sonic wave filled the area. Buzz. No! Venom released Thomas, falling to its knees in pain. Within seconds, the Venom suit retracted, leaving Eddie in his original form. Surrounded by the sonic waves, Thomas coughed a few times and slowly approached Eddie. In a low voice he taunted, "Eddie, why don't you show off some more?" Facing the guns pointed at him, Eddie fell into despair. "Parasite, we're done for?" Venom was equally desperate, struggling in vain against the sonic waves. At the Life Foundation. "Well done, Thomas." Drake smiled broadly, ordering, "Bring back the perfect symbiote, the most perfect creature I've ever seen." But as he smiled and Thomas extended his hand, and as Eddie and Venom despaired, footsteps echoed from nearby. A figure slowly approached. End of chapter. Chapter 40. Chapter 40. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Under the bright sunlight, a shadow approached slowly, walking towards the commotion. Hearing the sudden footsteps, everyone, including Eddie, turned to look. The newcomer wore a black hooded cloak, obscuring most of his face, and exuded an air of mystery. "Friend, this place is dangerous. Stay back," Thomas warned in a low voice. But his warning was ignored, and the figure continued to approach. Instantly, Thomas and the others became alert, their guns subtly aimed at the figure, ready to fire if he came any closer. While they were on high alert, Venom, sensing something, showed a surprised expression. "This guy. He's not captured." Venom's voice reached Eddie, who instinctively asked, "You know him?" Eddie's question drew everyone's attention. Embarrassed by the stares, Eddie awkwardly said, "I didn't mean. You know what I mean." At this moment, Venom spoke again, clarifying for Eddie. "I can sense the other half of my body that I abandoned. It's inside this person." Then, Venom quickly explained the situation to Eddie. Understanding the explanation, Venom, controlling Eddie's body, spoke to the approaching figure under the watchful eyes of Drake and Thomas. "What are you doing here?" To mock me? Let me see what kind of host you've chosen. Venom then scrutinized the mysterious figure, but finding nothing special, dismissed it, saying, "He looks ordinary to me." While Drake and the others were puzzled by the conversation, the mysterious figure stopped in a less affected area by the sonic waves. Suddenly, black liquid emerged from the figure's right arm, forming a small venom head. "My foolish other half, you'll regret abandoning me to distract the enemies. And he's not ordinary." Syd's Venom spoke in a hoarse voice. Venom, controlling Eddie, paused and then smiled smugly. "Really? I can't see anything special about him. But my host is the perfect host. There's no better body than this." Influenced by his words, Venom's voice, filled with pride, showed his satisfaction with Eddie as his host, genuinely believing no one could be more perfect. He thought the other half was just boasting. How could it have found a body comparable to Eddie's in such a short time? While they conversed, Drake and the others, analyzing the information, were both shocked and delighted. At the Life Foundation, Drake hurried to the communicator, his excitement evident as he instructed Thomas. "Thomas, quickly, capture this symbiote host as well." A satisfied smile spread across his face. Unexpectedly capturing another symbiote host? As for capturing him, Drake had no doubts. Before they had the sonic weapons, he might have hesitated, but now he had no concerns. He even thought the approaching symbiote host was foolish. Did he think having a symbiote made him invincible? This person was about to learn a hard lesson. Drake's smile grew wider, envisioning himself as the perfect life form after experimenting on the two captured subjects. Under the watchful eyes of the Life Foundation, Thomas and his men moved. But in the next second, men carrying sonic devices rushed over. Eddie grimaced in pain, and Syd was also enveloped by the special sonic waves. The venom on his hand showed a pained expression and instinctively retracted into Syd's right hand. Seeing this venom also affected by the sonic waves, Thomas and the observing Drake sighed in relief. "Raise your hands. We need you to come with us." Thomas aimed his black gun at Syd. As he felt victory was within grasp, something unexpected happened. The mysterious figure, who they thought had no power to resist, suddenly had a blue light emanate from his hand. Spiritual light beam experience +1. In the next moment, a blue high-energy beam appeared, swiftly piercing through the approaching guard with a sonic device. The sonic device in the guard's hand was obliterated, along with a hole through his chest. "Ah!" A scream echoed, and the guard fell to the ground. "What is this?" Everyone present was shocked. Eddie's mouth hung open. Venom inside Eddie was stunned. Venom inside Syd was also taken aback. The smiles on the faces of Drake and the others at the Life Foundation disappeared. Thomas and the guards widened their eyes in horror, doubting what they had just witnessed. Hand firing a laser? Sensing the danger, Thomas instinctively pulled the trigger of his black gun. Bang! The silver bullet spun rapidly, heading towards its target. The sudden gunshot startled everyone. When they saw the bullet's target, they were even more shocked. The bullet was stopped by 2 fingers. Rebound shield experience +1. Divine finger experience +1. The sound of shattering glass echoed as the space around them cracked like a mirror. In slow motion, the silver bullet twisted under the immense impact, and space fragments cut deep grooves into it. In an instant, the bullet reversed direction with a swoosh, flying back. "Ah, my hand!" Thomas screamed. The deformed silver bullet shattered his gun, pierced his hand, and lodged into his elbow. Clutching his bleeding hand, Thomas was horrified. The others had similar expressions, all filled with fear. Staring at the hooded figure standing not far away, they felt a suffocating pressure. In just a few moments, the blue beam and the casual deflection of the bullet had put immense pressure on them. It felt like they were ants, and he was a god standing high above them. "Who are you?" Thomas, enduring the pain, asked. This isn't the symbiote's power. "You." This question wasn't just his but everyone's. Eddie, possessed by Venom, was strong enough, but compared to this guy, he was nothing. They even suspected this person could easily defeat Eddie. End of chapter. Chapter 41. Chapter 41. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. At that moment, the scene fell into silence, with shock evident in everyone's eyes. Eddie was equally unsettled. After obtaining Venom, even though he hadn't thought much about it, deep down, he felt special, until he encountered this person. Unlike Venom's abilities, both the blue beam and the method of deflecting bullets seemed incredibly powerful. The stranger didn't do much. He merely raised his hand and resolved everything. It was as if an overwhelming aura emanated from him, suffocating everyone, making any resistance seem futile. Thomas and the others panted heavily, cold sweat dripping from their foreheads, feeling the same pressure. At the Life Foundation, Drake and the others were glued to the screen, their emotions in turmoil. A more perfect being than a human symbiote hybrid? This astonishing aura and power seemed godlike. The venom inside Eddie took a long time to recover from the disbelief. Such a powerful host? This ability to effortlessly handle everything. How could this be human? His other half had bonded with such a being? Even though he didn't want to, Venom couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. While they were in shock, Syd's venom recovered as the sonic device was destroyed. The black liquid slowly wriggled out of Syd's right hand. "I told you, you'd regret it." Venom's small face twisted into a slightly sinister smile. He laughed. "I didn't give him power. He gave me power. You can't even imagine the feeling, the addictive sensation." Turning to Thomas and the others, he cackled, "Crawl, you worms, you can't win. You can't fathom my host's power." Despite being stunned by the blue beam and bullet deflection, Venom was now basking in borrowed glory. At the Life Foundation, Drake hesitated for a moment before ordering through the communicator, "Open fire." Thomas and the guards, suppressing their fear, gritted their teeth and raised their guns. Bang! 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 Silver bullets spun and whistled towards their target. Then, something even more suffocating happened. The man in black didn't even raise his hand this time, standing quietly in place. The bullets aimed at him suddenly reversed direction, reflecting back at the shooters. Rebound shield experience +1. Rebound shield experience +1. Ah! Screams echoed continuously. The more bullets they fired, the worse their plight, with some even getting shot in the heart by the reflected bullets, collapsing in convulsions. Even those lightly injured were bleeding profusely, showing signs of blood loss. At that moment, the man in black exuded an even more suffocating presence, filling everyone with despair. Not only were the bullets ineffective, but the opponent didn't even move to neutralize them? They had never felt such suffocation or such an invincible presence. Even Venom on Eddie was wide-eyed and open-mouthed, clearly shocked by the scene. Syd's Venom, despite his own shock, mocked, "Ha! Abandoned half. See? This is the power of my great host. You." Venom on Eddie felt both anger and jealousy. At that moment, sirens were heard in the distance, indicating someone had called the police. Hearing the sirens, the mysterious man in black moved slightly, starting to leave. Seeing him leave, Eddie couldn't help but shout, "Who are you?" The man in black turned to look at him, and in the shadow of the hood, a pair of dazzling golden eyes met his. For a moment, Eddie felt as if he was looking into the eyes of a god. When he came to his senses, the mysterious man had already walked away, leaving Venom's voice echoing distantly. "We will meet again. Look forward to it." The mysterious figure gradually disappeared from sight. At that moment, a sound from nearby caught Eddie's attention. Before he could react, the Venom suit enveloped him again. A bullet embedded itself into the suit. "Humans!" Venom roared angrily and, under the horrified gazes of Thomas and the others, charged at them. Crunch, crunch. A series of brain-crunching sounds followed. When everything settled, only a pile of corpses remained. At the Life Foundation, Drake and his team, watching the battle, were both panicked and furious. Drake slammed his fist on the table, his face filled with frustration. Though it was Eddie who killed most of his men, the mysterious figure in black lingered in his mind. Far from the battlefield, Eddie and Venom were having a conversation. "Who is he?" Eddie wondered aloud. He searched his memories, feeling a vague familiarity but unable to recall. "Humph, Eddie, why bother? My other half said we'd meet again." "You'll find out then." Venom taunted. Eddie, looking at Venom's grim visage, asked, "What are you?" "I am Venom," Venom circled Eddie, his voice hoarse. "Your body belongs to me. You just bit off someone's head? I need to replenish my energy. Listen carefully. Eddie. You didn't find us. We found you. You're like my steed." Venom declared ownership. Eddie retorted while walking. "Like a parasite? Your attitude towards me is very different from your other halves towards that guy in black." He seemed very attentive, like a shepherd dog. Eddie spoke bluntly. "Venom." Suddenly, he noticed something. "Parasite? Eddie." Venom roared. Their bickering continued. "Where are you taking me?" "We're going to find Drake's rocket." "You know this person." "How do you know I know him?" "I know everything, Eddie." "Really?" "I know all about you. I'm in your head. When you're hungry, will you eat people again?" "Very likely." "Oh my God. We came to Earth for food. Cooperate, and you'll live. That's my condition." Eddie felt conflicted. At that moment, his phone rang. Eddie looked at the caller ID. It was a colleague. Answering, a female voice demanded, "Eddie, we've been waiting for you at the Life Foundation for a long time. Where are you?" Eddie replied awkwardly, "Let me explain." Chapter 42. Chapter 42. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. In a secluded alley, Venom formed a small head, its face full of confusion. "Syd, why are we leaving like this?" Venom was puzzled. Weren't they supposed to stop Drake from launching the rocket to bring back the symbiotes? Syd glanced at Venom and said casually, "I trust Eddie. He should be able to stop Drake." Of course, this was just an excuse. Syd simply believed that launching the rocket would take some time. Instead of spending that time trying to stop it, he thought it was better to grow stronger. If he could upgrade all the powers of the snake to their maximum, the so-called symbiote meteorite would be a trivial matter for him. Shaking his head, Syd added, "And Earth is deep water, full of things and people beyond your imagination. Some things will be dealt with by others. We just need to watch." Deep water. Venom's small face was full of confusion, not understanding. Wasn't it just Earth? How deep could it be? The doubt flashed through his mind, but then he focused on what had just happened. His face lit up with excitement. "Syd, you were amazing just now. They were all terrified of you. You didn't see the look on my foolish other half's face. It was priceless." Venom's face turned to surprise, speaking incredulously. "Syd, the blue energy you fired and the way you deflected the bullets, are those your superpowers?" He remembered the two assassins from earlier. Back then, his host had also displayed other superpowers. "You have so many abilities." Venom was incredulous. Having fully bonded with several humans, he knew from their memories that this host seemed a bit off. Too strong. Almost abnormal? Shaking his small black head, Venom didn't dwell on it, thinking the host was just a bit unusual. "Syd, where are we going now?" Venom asked curiously. "Let's leave this area first. I told you before that I'm being hunted." As he spoke, Syd quickly left the area. Along the way, beams of sunlight touched him. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Unlock progress 80%. Energy points 298. Syd glanced at the panel. There were still many energy points needed to reach 85%. Half an hour later, Syd gradually stopped. With Venom looking confused, he began practicing Black Particle. Black Particle experience +1. Black Particle experience +1. Soon, it was evening. Ability: Black Particle, 266/500, Level 2. Looking at the panel data, Syd sighed in relief. He had spent almost the entire day to reach this level. By tomorrow evening, it should be ready to upgrade. If not for maintaining full energy, he could have increased the data even more. Then, he left the area and, with Venom's assistance, found a secluded spot to sleep. With Venom sensing danger and his internal photon energy detecting anomalies, he wasn't too worried. The next morning, Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. In a daze, Syd was awakened by the prompt sound. He glanced at the panel. Energy points, 355. After getting up, he continued practicing Black Particle with Venom still looking confused. Time flew by, and soon it was evening. A prompt sounded in his mind. Ability: Black Particle, 0/1000, Level 3. Looking at the refreshed data on the panel and feeling the sudden change in his body, Syd's mood lifted. What happened? Venom was instantly alert, noticing a change in Syd's body but not understanding what had changed. He was very puzzled. Syd didn't respond immediately, quietly sensing the sudden changes within. Sunlight continuously absorbed, filling the void of photon energy. When his photon energy was full, Syd silently sensed the changes. With Black Particle at level 3, he found that his energy could now perform more than 70 level 2 abilities. It had almost doubled. Syd raised his hand and, under Venom's astonished gaze, fired a level 3 Black Particle at the ground. Black Particle experience +1. Black ripples appeared on his finger, followed by a fist-sized Black Particle. With a swoosh, the particle shot towards the ground. In the next second, a fist-sized, 24-meter-deep hole appeared on the ground. Venom was shocked. Syd's lips curled into a slight smile. Not bad, the power has increased significantly. If previously, hitting a person with Black Particle only had a slim chance of survival with prompt medical treatment, now with a fist-sized Black Particle, survival chances were minimal. Hitting the limbs might be survivable, but hitting the torso or head was almost certainly fatal. After all, no one could survive with a fist-sized hole in their chest, abdomen, or head, unless they had Wolverine's healing factor. But how many people in this world had healing abilities? In short, Black Particle had become a highly lethal ability, ensuring that targets didn't need a follow-up hit, unlike before. Before, not finishing off the target could mean they survived, but finishing them off wasted energy, which was disadvantageous against multiple enemies. But, sensing his photon energy consumption, Syd shook his head, feeling a bit helpless. That single attack had consumed a significant portion of his photon energy. Roughly estimating, he could perform about 30 level 3 Black Particles. It seems I'll have to deal with energy shortages for a while. Unless he acquired more abilities or upgraded more abilities to increase his photon energy. Syd shook his head helplessly. After testing Black Particle, he was about to sense the impact of increased photon energy on photon sunshine when Venom's voice interrupted. Syd, did I see it wrong? How did your release get so much bigger? The range has also increased a lot. Venom found it unbelievable, almost thinking it was an illusion. Can practice increase so much? He didn't understand. Ahem, you saw wrong, Syd coughed lightly, speaking nonchalantly. Really? Venom's black face was full of confusion. Taking advantage of Venom's confusion, Syd looked up at the sky. The sun was almost setting, the weak sunlight tinting the sky red. In the next second, his photon energy decreased. End of chapter. Chapter 43. Chapter 43. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Suddenly, within a range of about 25 meters, the rosy sunlight slightly distorted. Syd quickly stopped his actions to prevent his photon energy from being depleted. While absorbing the faint sunlight to replenish the missing energy, Syd thought, only increased by about 5 meters? Shaking his head, he felt a bit disappointed. The increase was rather ordinary, far from what he had expected. He had hoped for an increase of 40 to 50 meters, but that was clearly too much to ask. After all, this was just a slight improvement in the quality of his photon energy, coupled with an increase in the total amount of energy, resulting in a small expansion of the range. It seems that to truly increase the range, I need to upgrade Sunshine to level 3. Syd shook his head, realizing he had to take it slow. However, other abilities reaching level 3 also brought significant improvements, so it wasn't all bad. Continuously enhancing them would also be a considerable boost. What's next to upgrade? Sunshine? As he pondered, Venom was left in a daze. Was it my imagination, or did the sunlight just distort on a large scale? Venom said in amazement. Syd replied casually, really? Maybe it was just your imagination. Imagination. Venom was stunned. Could it really have been a hallucination? Did Syd not notice anything? At that moment, Venom doubted whether his perception was failing him. First, Syd's attacks had become significantly larger. Then he sensed the sunlight distorting. Venom was left bewildered. Ahem. Syd cleared his throat and focused on choosing the next ability to upgrade. Next, I'll choose Rebound Shield. Syd had thought it through. While Sunshine was crucial, it required too much energy and time to upgrade, time that could be used to enhance several other abilities to level 3. Most importantly, he currently lacked defensive capabilities, having plenty of offensive abilities but few defensive ones. He might get taken down by a surprise attack if he wasn't careful. Rebound Shield was quite useful, at least against modern bullets. Moreover, it could also block energy attacks, although he hadn't had the chance to test that yet. Upgrading this ability to level 3 would significantly expand its defensive range, so he wouldn't need to activate 2 rebound shields simultaneously in combat. Glancing at the sky and sensing the recovering photon energy within him, Syd didn't continue practicing but instead left the area. As the sun set and the moon rose, then the moon set and the sun rose again. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Nothing unexpected happened, and Syd passed the night safely. Early the next morning, he resumed practicing his abilities. Rebound Shield Experience +1. Rebound Shield Experience +1. By evening. Ability. Rebound Shield, 241/500, Level 2. Time flew by, and another day passed. After using up some of his internal energy, he successfully upgraded Rebound Shield to Level 3 before sunset. The prompt sounded. Ability. Rebound Shield, 0/1000, Level 3. Sensing the changes in his body, Syd smiled. Rebound Shield Experience +1. As he activated Rebound Shield, he couldn't help but sigh in relief. The range of Rebound Shield had indeed increased significantly. Upon activation, it covered his entire front. This meant that as long as he was careful with his sides and timely in activating Rebound Shield, his defense was essentially secure. Of course, this was assuming his energy didn't run out. If it did, even he could be overwhelmed. At that moment, he felt much more confident. Meanwhile, since the activation of Rebound Shield was quite subtle, Venom didn't notice much. He just looked on in bewilderment as Syd practiced, not understanding the purpose of it all. During this time, Venom kept urging him to take action, complaining about not having bitten anyone in a while. Syd, feeling helpless, ignored Venom's requests and focused on Sunshine. Logically, he should be upgrading other abilities first, but he couldn't help himself. Compared to Sunshine, the improvement of other abilities felt insignificant. With Black Particle for attack and Rebound Shield for defense, he was pretty well covered now. With anticipation, he awaited the next morning. Night fell, and hours passed. With Venom's keen senses, he spent another safe night undisturbed. As the sky began to lighten, looking at the overcast, cloud-covered sky, Syd frowned slightly. Photon energy +1. Although he was still absorbing sunlight, the rate had drastically decreased. Unlucky. Syd sighed. But it was understandable. It had been sunny for several days. A rainy day was bound to come eventually. Photon energy +1. If only I could fly above the clouds. Syd shook his head, feeling a growing desire for flight. He wondered if the ability unlocked at 85% progress would be floating or flying. At that moment, he felt even more anticipation. Once Sunshine was upgraded, he would work on the unlock progress. While absorbing sunlight, Syd practiced Sunshine as best as he could. Sunshine Experience +1. A soft, golden glow appeared around him, stunning Venom, who was at a loss for words. What is this? Venom was utterly bewildered. He realized he really didn't understand his host, Syd. How long had it been? And Syd had already displayed another inexplicable ability. Glowing. What use was that? Venom circled the young man, trying not to laugh, and asked, Syd, Are you trying to become a light bulb? Suddenly, Venom thought of something. Oh, you glowing like that. It does resemble those human depictions of God. Syd shook his head, focusing on practicing photon sunshine. Sunshine experience +1. Sunshine experience +1. Sunshine experience +1. As Syd practiced sunshine early in the morning, actions were also taking place inside Experiment Base 23. 3 black-clad guards walked slowly to a special confinement room. This room was unique, with an empty space around it. There were no other prisoners, and even the iron bars were much thicker, as if specially reinforced. They reached the bars and quickly opened the door, walking towards the figure bound by several chains inside. Number 5. Wake up. Noticing their arrival, Number 5 lifted his head. He had a pale complexion, a tall and thin frame, and wore a white suit. His gaze was calm. Come with us. Unlocking his chains, the 3 guards led him to the last confinement room. End of chapter. Chapter 44. Chapter 44. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Footsteps echoed slowly through the quiet corridor. The group of 4 soon arrived at the confinement room holding Number 1. Gazing at this room, which was as strictly guarded as his own, if not more so, Number 5's eyes flashed with strong apprehension. Even he was wary of the person inside. It wasn't just because the person inside was powerful, but also because he had the title of Mutant Slayer. Thinking of the pulse interference, even Number 5 showed a hint of disgust in his eyes. The 4 of them peered inside. A middle-aged man, appearing to be about 2 meters tall with a burly physique and a body seemingly made of bronze metal, lay with his eyes closed on a white iron bed. Hearing the footsteps, Number 1 opened his eyes and looked over. Number 1, there's a mission the base needs you to handle. Leading the group, the warden Mark opened the cell door and walked over to unlock Number 1's chains. As the chains fell off, Number 1 stretched his body, a ferocious expression appearing on his face. In a rough, booming voice, he said, "A mission? A mission that requires me? What kind of mission is worth my time?" Glancing at the wardens, a faint sneer appeared on his face, feeling they were making a big fuss over nothing, needing him for a trivial task. Moreover, we're taking Number 5 too? Number 1's metallic face showed a hint of anger, feeling insulted. Mark glanced at him and said, "The enemy is very troublesome, a powerful mutant, and this is a direct order from Director Alessandro." Hearing the enemy was a powerful mutant, Number 1 became even more indifferent, showing some irritation, ready to scoff. However, upon hearing the name Alessandro, the sneer on his face faded, replaced by respect. Not just him, but Number 5 showed a similar expression. Mark smiled and turned, leading the group outside. They walked through the area where the ordinary prisoners were held. In an instant, the previously chatting prisoners fell silent, the area becoming so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. It's Number 1 and Number 5. Seeing the metallic gleam of Number 1 and the calm, indifferent Number 5, the prisoners were terrified, their eyes filled with fear. No one understood the terror of these 2 monsters better than they did. They still remembered when a burly black man tried to harass Number 5, and Number 5, even under the suppression of the mutant controller, managed to use an energy shock. A red energy blast covered the man in an instant, and within 2 seconds, he was charred and dead on the ground, in a gruesome state. Not to mention, Number 5 also had super speed healing, like an unkillable cockroach. No one could defeat him. Number 1 was even more straightforward, punching an offending person into pieces, with blood and limbs flying everywhere, scaring countless people to death. After that, anyone who provoked them met a dire end. So both ordinary prisoners and mutants were terrified of them, not just because of their strength, but also their ruthless, cold-blooded nature, killing without hesitation. Glancing at the prisoners, a sneer flashed in Number 1's eyes. He looked down on them, or rather, anyone ranked below him. As they walked past, the prisoners started discussing. Where are they taking Number 1 and Number 5? Did you forget about Number 37? The previously confused prisoners suddenly understood, feeling schadenfreude and pity. Number 37 is doomed this time. No one can match those 2 monsters. Right, even if number 37 is strong, he's finished this time. Let's hope number 37 can survive. Even the freckled youth who had spoken with Syd shook his head. May God bless you. Bets started on whether number 37 would be brought back with broken limbs or dead. No one believed number 1 and number 5 could fail. Outside the experiment base, number 5 frowned slightly and asked, "Where are you taking us to find your target?" Mark smiled, saying, "Number 37's location is hard to pinpoint. He's constantly moving. We need to wait for a mutant code named Bloodhound. But Bloodhound is currently on a mission and can't come immediately, so we need some time." As he led the way, he continued speaking. "Now, I'm taking you to capture another mutant, to help you adapt to each other and possibly learn to cooperate, to avoid any mishaps when dealing with number 37. Hearing about cooperation, both number 1 and number 5 were dismissive. They believed there was no need for cooperation. They could handle number 37 alone. And number 37? Number 1 felt slightly angry, saying, "Are you saying we should go after this so-called number 37? Hearing the ranking, number 1 knew number 37's strength. Thinking about it, a look of disdain appeared on his face. Not just him, but number 5 also looked incredulous, thinking he had misheard. A number 37, needing their intervention? Mark glanced at them, explaining, "After capturing another mutant, I'll explain and show you some data and videos on number 37. Remember, number 37 isn't as easy to deal with as you think." Despite Mark's words, both number 1 and number 5 remained indifferent, feeling he was overreacting, even suggesting watching videos, which they found laughable. Did he not understand their power? The 5 of them got into a car and drove off into the distance. Half an hour later, they stopped outside a house. After getting out, Mark unlocked the mutant controllers on number 1 and number 5. Then, they approached the target house. Bang bang bang. After a series of knocks, a young voice came from inside. "Who's there?" Click. The door was opened. A blonde teenage boy's head peeked out. Looking very young, Fabian's face turned pale instantly. The metallic body of number 1 and the warden uniforms immediately filled him with unease. Bang! Mark held the door, his voice stern. "We received a report saying Fabian used superpowers." End of chapter. Chapter 45. Chapter 45. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Before Mark could finish speaking, Fabian, realizing their intent, had a change in expression and used his ability. With a loud boom, an invisible telekinetic force surged from his body, rushing towards the 5 people outside the door. Mark and the 3 guards turned pale. Before they could even raise their guns, they were sent flying several meters away, landing hard on the lawn. Number 5 had a similar fate. He was sent flying a few meters by the telekinetic force, sustaining some scratches along the way. However, these scratches healed within seconds. As for number 1, he didn't even move. His body, gleaming with metallic luster, stood firmly in place like a steel pillar, completely unaffected. "You!" Fabian tried multiple times but couldn't budge number 1, his face turning pale. Number 1 grinned menacingly. "Little brat." Fabian, feeling panicked, shifted his gaze to the scattered guns on the ground. 3 black handguns floated into the air, their muzzles turning towards number 1, ready to fire at any moment. But before Fabian could fire, number 1's action interrupted him. Yellow light flashed in number 1's eyes, followed by a strange noise reverberating around them. With a series of clangs, the handguns fell to the ground. "My power!" Fabian stared in disbelief, fearfully looking at the metallic man with glowing yellow eyes. "My ability has been blocked." Number 1 sneered. "You worthless brat." Ignoring Fabian's struggles, he easily lifted him by the collar and tossed him in front of Mark. "All right, he's yours." "What a bore," number 1 said, turning back towards the car. Number 5, eyes flashing with wariness, silently followed. Mark, looking a bit surprised, commented, "I underestimated you." Apologizing briefly, Mark directed his attention to Crowley. "Show them the footage of number 37. Crowley nodded, retrieving a silver tablet and handing it to number 1. Number 1 and Number 5 initially seemed indifferent, feeling it was unnecessary, but still watched out of curiosity. As the footage played, showing Number 37's abilities and combat scenes, surprise filled their eyes. Even the despairing Fabian looked astonished. As they watched the footage of the teenager in the midst of combat, continually defeating numerous foes with abilities like teleportation, black particles, blue energy beams, and deflecting bullets, admiration filled Fabian's eyes. Number 1 and Number 5, despite their initial shock, soon resumed their indifferent expressions. "That's Number 37?" Number 5 asked. "He has so many abilities?" Inborn, Mark nodded. Number 1 and Number 5, despite their astonishment, still felt a hint of envy. They had gained their powers through numerous experiments, surviving against all odds. Why did this Number 37 have such luck? Such a lucky brat. Number 1 clicked his tongue, but then regained his composure, saying, "Multiple abilities mean nothing. If he encounters me, it's over for him." Even without his pulse interference ability, Number 1 felt confident against Number 37. Number 5 shared a similar sentiment. Though he didn't always see eye to eye with Number 1, he acknowledged Number 1's strength, believing he could handle Number 37 with his energy blast. At this moment, he looked forward to teaching Number 37 a lesson. Mark, shaking his head, warned, "While we have gauged Number 37's limits and seen his abilities in this footage, you must remain cautious. His many abilities could still catch you off guard. Spend some time at the base to get used to each other. Once the mutant tracker arrives, we'll set off to capture Number 37. Fabian, remaining silent, felt sympathy for Number 37. Who knew when Number 37 would be caught? He couldn't blame himself for thinking this way. The metal man was too powerful, with an annoying ability. He looked at the seemingly unremarkable other person, feeling even more pity for Number 37. As they headed back to the 23rd experiment base, the internet was abuzz with activity. To calm the public, the beautiful and charming Irina hosted a live show. In front of tens of thousands of viewers, she wore a black and white dress, her smile enchanting, speaking softly. "Don't worry, viewers. According to the secret information I have, the mutant boy will soon be captured." With an even more charming smile, she continued, "I've heard that the authorities have deployed their secret weapon this time. As for what the secret weapon is, I'll keep it a mystery for now. Just know that this time, the boy won't escape." Ending the live show with a smile, Irina left viewers in heated discussions. End of chapter. Chapter 46. Chapter 46. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Secret weapon? Irina looks confident this time. She probably won't fail. I'm really curious. If Irina is so sure, that fugitive won't escape. Haha. Agreed. Netizens were abuzz with discussions, their hearts filled with anticipation. They were eager to hear Irina announce that the mutant fugitive had been caught. They wondered if there would be a live broadcast this time. Curiosity and expectation filled their minds. While the general public speculated about when the fugitive would be defeated by the secret weapon and captured, some mutants and a few of Syd's acquaintances who saw the news grew worried. In a dark underground tunnel, this little guy, Logan, put down his cigar, his brows furrowing tightly with concern. Chris, beside him, sighed and said, "I hope he'll be okay." Otto and Valentine exchanged a glance. "Do we need to help him?" Otto raised his hand. Valentine shook his head, dismissing the idea. "How can we help when we don't even know where he is? All we can do now is pray that he gets through this danger." Hearing this, Chris frowned. The information Irina revealed is probably true. Those trying to capture Syd must have prepared a secret weapon. Irina sounds very confident. It's likely that Syd. He wanted to say more but eventually fell silent, though everyone understood his meaning. Indeed, considering the strength Syd displayed recently, he wasn't invincible. There were many ways to deal with him. Poison, sniper assassination, a group of well-armed people attacking, and weapons targeting the X gene. Just thinking about it, they could come up with several methods to restrain Syd, not to mention the more terrifying means that Irina called a secret weapon. At this moment, Logan spoke up. Hey, that kid is in danger. We can't just do nothing. We should try to find him and rescue him. Chris nodded, indicating his willingness to search. Otto and Valentine hesitated for a while before finally agreeing to the idea after looking at each other. After some preparations, they left the sewer and began searching, trying to find Syd before the government did. Besides Logan and the others seeing Irina's broadcast, Professor X in the far-off X-Mansion was also speaking seriously to Cyclops, Scott. Scott, have you found that Omega-level mutant? Standing nearby, Scott shook his head. Hearing this, Professor X felt a bit anxious, worrying that the Omega-level mutant might fall into the wrong hands, potentially causing unimaginable disaster. At this moment, Cyclops, unable to hold back his curiosity, asked, Professor, is that Omega-level mutant really so important that we must find him? Professor X glanced at him, shaking his head, knowing Scott hadn't truly witnessed the power of an Omega-level mutant. Even with some understanding, it was merely an estimate based on gene. Professor X explained slowly, Scott, you don't understand. Omega is not simply a level 5. It's actually an infinite level. The power of an Omega-level mutant cannot be assessed by common standards. Hearing this, Scott looked shocked. Infinite level? Is an Omega-level mutant really that powerful? Is the gap between levels 4 and 5 so vast? As he stood there in amazement, Professor X sighed, find him as soon as possible. Then, he looked at Scott. Scott, do your best to find the Omega-level mutant, but now you need to help another child. Understanding the professor's meaning instantly, Scott nodded. Professor, I'll take people to save that child. I'll go get Jean and the others. With that, he stepped out of the office to find Jean and Storm. Watching his departing figure, Professor X's worry deepened, concerned for both the Omega-level mutant and the child about to face danger. Half an hour later, Cyclops, having gathered his team, boarded the jet and flew towards the target city. As the X-Men took action, so did Magneto, Eric, within the Brotherhood of Mutants. Turning to Mystique, Eric asked, Raven, have you found the person I asked for? The slim, blue-skinned Mystique shook her head. The kid is too good at hiding. I just can't find him. She had infiltrated government departments, but even they hadn't found him, let alone her alone. Hearing her explanation, Eric frowned, displeased. Keep an eye on those departments. See when they go after the kid, and if necessary, blend in. Eric ordered. Mystique nodded and turned to leave. But before she could go, Eric's voice sounded behind her. By the way, what about the Omega-level mutant I asked you to find? Mystique shook her head again. Eric's frown deepened. Watching her disappear, Eric suddenly laughed. Old friend, let's see who finds the Omega-level mutant first. As the X-Men and Brotherhood of Mutants moved, Eddie, fleeing with Venom, also saw the news. Eddie didn't think much of it, soon forgetting after a glance. Besides them, Heidi and the other two, who had once encountered Syd with the underground organization, also saw the news because they always followed his updates. They were now looking at each other. After they parted ways, they asked some mutants what the ultimate threat to mutants meant. Many didn't know. However, they guessed it likely referred to level 4, 5, or even Omega-level mutants. The possibility of level 5 or Omega level wasn't small. They were shocked. Facing the news of Syd being hunted, they felt conflicted, unsure whether to help their friend. Noon. The sky was overcast, clouds thick, a storm seemingly imminent. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. At this moment, Syd was diligently practicing photon energy. Ability. Photon energy, 11/500, level 2. Glancing at the panel, he muttered, what lousy weather. If not for the weather, a morning of practice wouldn't have yielded such little progress. End of chapter. Chapter 47. Chapter 47. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Whoosh. A damp wind blew as heavy rain poured from the sky. Syd frowned, pausing his photon energy practice, and moved under a building to take shelter from the rain. The rain finally stopped by evening. Ability. Photon energy, 19/500, Level 2. Glancing at his progress, Syd shook his head, looking forward to tomorrow's sun. Time passed, and soon it was the next day. The sun shone brightly. As the sunlight hit him, a series of notifications followed. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. While Syd was practicing photon energy, the personnel at Base 23 received the arrival of the person they had been waiting for. Base 23. Finally. Number 1 and Number 5, who had been waiting impatiently, looked towards the person being brought in from a distance. Among them were Warden Marco, Captain Kenny, and Captain George, along with a dozen heavily armed soldiers. In the middle of them was the Bloodhound. This person wore gray clothes, had yellow hair, and an ordinary appearance, looking around 30 years old, very unremarkable. Is he the Bloodhound? As the group approached, Number 1 asked impatiently. Captain Kenny, standing next to the Bloodhound, nodded. Yes, he's the Bloodhound. He then took out a pillow that the mutant boy had once used and handed it to the Bloodhound. Under the watchful eyes of Number 1 and Number 5, the Bloodhound sniffed the pillow carefully and then started searching around the base. Soon, he walked straight in a specific direction, seemingly having locked onto the scent molecules left behind by his target. Seeing the Bloodhound determine the direction, Captain George and Captain Kenny secretly breathed a sigh of relief. They had feared that last night's heavy rain would wash away the traces, but it seemed that a mutant's abilities were exceptional. Even after such a long time, he could still track the scent. The group got into vehicles, following the Bloodhound. The Bloodhound, moving swiftly ahead, resembled an actual hunting dog. Time passed, and after about half an hour, suddenly, the Bloodhound, who had been running ahead, slowed down and stopped. The area ahead was very secluded, and even the streets and houses looked very run down. Are we near Number 37's hiding place? Captain George, getting out of the car, was excited, his eyes shining. The Bloodhound nodded. We've found him, haha. Number 37, let's see how you escape this time. Captain Kenny laughed grimly. Captain George also sneered. Number 37, just come with us and be our lab rat. They began to set up their operation. Click, click, click. 5 sentinel spiders crawled out of a safe, their mechanical eyes glowing red. Meanwhile, Warden Marco led 2 men towards a distant high-rise building. They would monitor the target from a high vantage point, using drones to lock onto his position. If they spotted him, they would immediately relay his escape location to George and the others. Even with the Bloodhound, they took these precautions to avoid any mishaps. Looking at the remaining dozen people, Number 5 casually said, "Leave this fight to us. You can watch or provide support." Captain George and Captain Kenny nodded, feeling confident. While they discussed, Syd also noticed something unusual. "Syd, be careful." Venom suddenly emerged from his right hand, looking solemnly into the distance. Syd's brow furrowed slightly, becoming alert. He knew Venom's senses were sharp, and it must have detected something. Deflection shield +1. An invisible shield appeared in front of him. Syd cautiously approached the outside and looked into the distance. The next second, his expression changed slightly. A group of familiar-looking people stood in the distance, one of them pointing towards him, seemingly saying the target was inside. Spatial transfer +1. Spatial transfer +1. In Venom's astonished gaze, Syd's figure disappeared from where he stood. However, Syd frowned, realizing that no matter where he hid, the distant people seemed always able to find his location. Syd knew he had to deal with these people to escape. The next second, maintaining his deflection shield, he walked outside. Open ground. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, a mysterious figure in black, with his face hidden by a black hood, walked out slowly. "You finally came out." Captain Kenny grinned maliciously. "Let's see how you run this time." At this moment, a faint smile appeared on the metallic face of Number 1. "Are you the so-called Number 37, the waste?" Number 5 remained indifferent. Captain Kenny sneered again. "Do you know who they are? Compared to them, you're nothing. Just come back to the lab with us, haha." He laughed loudly, venting the frustration built up over repeated failures. Finally, he could deal with this guy properly. Captain Kenny was in a good mood. Beside him, Captain George felt similarly, smiling broadly. Number 5 possessed super speed healing and energy blasts. Number 1 had a metallic body, enhanced strength, heightened senses, and most importantly, pulse interference. How could this kid fight against that? He sneered. In a moment, even if number 37 wanted to run, he couldn't. Without his abilities, number 37 would be an ordinary person. How could he resist? Syd tilted his head. Is that so? Heh! Seeing Syd's defiance, Captain George sneered. You'll soon see how powerful they are. It'll be miserable for you. As he finished, number 5 stepped forward, his expression calm and indifferent. All right, let me play with you first. Number 1 glanced at him, crossing his arms, saying nothing. Although he didn't think highly of number 5, dealing with number 37 would be more than enough. Probably, number 37 would be dead in a single move? The nearby Captain George and others began to worry, fearing that number 5 might be too harsh and kill number 37 outright. Under everyone's gaze, number 5 made his move. In an instant, terrifying red energy surged from number 5, distorting the surrounding light. The energy wave forced Captain George and the others to retreat, their faces showing horror. Such terrifying energy. As this thought emerged, the next second, several meters of red energy burst forth like a giant wave, sweeping towards number 37. Boom! The ground disintegrated inch by inch in its path. Under everyone's shocked gaze, the red energy engulfed Syd. Number 37 is finished. This thought popped into everyone's mind. End of chapter. Comment. Chapter 48. Chapter 48. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. As number 5's red energy engulfed number 37, no one believed he could survive. Number 5's expression remained indifferent, as if he was used to this outcome. Number 1 shook his head. Captain George sneered, I told you to come back to the lab with us. Why didn't you listen? Captain Kenny, on the other hand, felt a bit regretful, blaming number 5 for being too heavy-handed. What a pity. Looks like you won't escape this time. Ha ha ha. However, as the red energy subsided, they were shocked by what they saw. The red glow gradually faded, revealing the boy standing unscathed, as if nothing had happened. What? Number 37 didn't die. Impossible. Captain Kenny stared in disbelief at Syd, standing unharmed. How could he be fine? Captain George's sneer froze in disbelief. Number 5's previously indifferent expression changed, his eyes widening in surprise. Number 1 was also astonished. How could this be? While they struggled to believe their eyes, they heard the boy say calmly, returning to you. The next moment, something even more shocking happened. Boom! A massive surge of red energy appeared in front of Syd and rushed towards number 5. You! Number 5, in disbelief, hastily countered with his own red energy. Boom! A flash of red light erupted, and as the dust settled, Captain Kenny and the others stared in shock. Number 5's body was charred, his clothes mostly incinerated, and he looked utterly disheveled. Had he reacted too slowly, or what? Number 5 hadn't completely blocked the attack? But the most important thing was that number 37 had used number 5's ability. This is impossible, Captain Kenny shouted, unable to accept it. How did you do that? How can you have such an ability? Were your previous displays not your limit? He was utterly incredulous. Captain George, number 1, and the dozen soldiers were also in disbelief. Number 37 has so many abilities. Others were shocked, but number 1 and number 5 couldn't help but feel a surge of jealousy. Why does he have so many abilities as a mutant? It's not fair. But, despite Syd's numerous abilities, it didn't mean they were afraid. Under Syd's astonished gaze, number 5's charred body began to change. Muscles wriggled and healed, blackened tissue fell away, and new skin quickly regenerated. Soon, a seemingly reborn number 5 stood before everyone. This is rapid regeneration, truly powerful. Captain Kenny and the others were visibly impressed. Given number 5's previous injuries, A normal person would have died long before infection set in. But number 5 recovered in less than a minute. What terrifying regenerative power. No wonder number 5 is called a monster. The soldier's eyes were filled with fear. If he could always regenerate like this, who could ever defeat him or kill him? Captain George sneered. You can't kill number 5. See that? Stop struggling. You can't win. If you resist, you'll only find despair. The others regained their confidence. With number 5's rapid healing and number 1's abilities, what chance did number 37 have? Number 5's eyes flashed red. You've angered me. Really? Syd asked calmly. Under everyone's expectant gaze, red energy once again surged from number 5. He extended his hand, forming a red energy blast. Boom! Number 5 threw it forward. As everyone watched, the boy in the black hood raised his right hand and casually swatted at the red energy ball, like swatting a fly. Crash! The sound of shattering glass echoed. In Venom's and everyone's stunned gaze, the red energy ball flew back at unimaginable speed. Ah! Number 5 screamed. The red energy ball hit him, sending him flying. His body crashed into a distant wall with a thunderous sound. As the wall cracked, everyone could faintly hear the sound of bones breaking. Looking at the disheveled number 5 and then at Syd, who had casually swatted the red energy ball away, everyone was dumbfounded. What's going on? How could this happen? They could hardly believe what they were seeing. Number 5, like an ant, couldn't even fight back? This number, 37. At this moment, number 1, with his rocky metallic skin, stepped forward. Glancing at number 5, he scowled impatiently. Number 5, you're becoming more useless. Can't even handle a kid. What a waste. In the distance, number 5 climbed to his feet with a look of resentment. Number 1's yellow eyes turned to Syd, and he sneered. Kid, don't think that just because you made number 5 look pathetic, you can win. I'm not like him. He's a waste, but I? He sneered. In the next moment, under everyone's excited and expectant gaze, his eyes glowed yellow. Pulse interference. Captain George and the others perked up, smiling broadly. Number 1's eyes glowed yellow as he sneered. Under my pulse interference, you can't use your mutant abilities. How does it feel to have power but be unable to use it? Ha ha ha. Number 1 laughed. At this moment, number 5, deliberately kept out of the pulse interference range, chuckled coldly. Red light surged from his body, forming a crimson energy ball in his right hand. In the next second, he hurled the energy ball towards Syd. Boom! The red energy ball soared through the air, distorting the light around it. Seeing this, the soldiers perked up, Captain George sneered, and Captain Kenny grinned. Number 1 glanced over, unconcerned. But in the next second, something unexpected happened. Crash! The sound of shattering glass. The crimson energy ball suddenly changed direction, flying straight towards the unconcerned number 1's chest. Boom! Red light exploded, and number 1 was sent flying, his body smashing into a distant wall. Captain George and the others were stunned. Syd tilted his head. What pulse? End of chapter. Chapter 49. Chapter 49. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Seeing number 1 being blasted away by the energy surge and looking at the boy standing there, everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. Pulse interference failed? This is impossible. Captain George couldn't believe it. Neither he nor Kenny, nor number 1 and number 5, could comprehend it. They all knew one thing very well. No one could use their abilities under pulse interference. This had been confirmed through countless experiments and battles. Yet now, the scene before them shattered their conclusions. Number 37 could still use his mutant abilities under pulse interference? Captain George was in utter disbelief, and the others were no better off. This defied common sense. Number 5 couldn't hold back and asked directly, Number 1, did you not use pulse interference on him? The others thought the same, their eyes turning to number 1. Number 1 climbed up, looking a bit disheveled. Despite his metallic body, he wasn't really hurt. Seeing his body, Everyone couldn't help but marvel at his defense capabilities. Number 1 angrily replied, "I did use it. I don't know what's going on. This kid." He stared at Syd in bewilderment, mumbling, "Why did the pulse interference fail? This shouldn't be possible. There's no ability I can't counter." Syd glanced at him. Indeed, the pulse interference hadn't failed. When Number 1 activated the pulse interference, Syd clearly felt his energy absorption stop working. Even though sunlight hit his body, he couldn't absorb any energy. However, he discovered that the pulse interference had no effect on his mimicry abilities, and he could still use the abilities of Orochi. Moreover, the light energy within him hadn't disappeared, which was why he could still react. He silently marveled at the bizarre nature of mutant abilities. If not for the special nature of his mimicry, he might have been caught this time. Thinking this, his gaze towards Number 1 and the others grew colder. Delaying could lead to complications, and he didn't intend to drag this out any longer. As he prepared to act, Captain Kenny sneered from a distance. "Number 37, you really surprise me more and more. You can use your abilities even under Number 1's pulse interference. What secret do you have? How are you so special?" Shaking his head, he continued, "But it doesn't matter. Even if you can resist Number 1's pulse interference, you can't kill Number 1 and Number 5. In the end, you'll still end up in the cold lab. And this time, we're fully prepared. You can't escape." His face was full of cold sneers. Captain George also sneered, "Just come back to the lab with us, haha." The dozen soldiers around them regained their confidence. As for Number 1 and Number 5, their expressions also calmed down. As Captain George and Captain Kenny said, no matter how special Number 37 was, he couldn't cause any significant trouble. Under absolute power, his struggles were futile. "Kneel down, kid." Number 1 sneered, stomping heavily towards him. The wind howled. Every step he took left a deep footprint, revealing his immense power. Number 5's body once again surged with red energy. At the same time, 5 black sentinel spiders began to move. As Kenny and the others watched with anticipation, and Number 5 and Number 1 prepared to join forces to kill the boy in the distance, an unexpected change occurred. Sunshine experience +1. Return to nothingness. A dazzling light shone overhead. In an instant, a faint light enveloped everything around them. Number 1, who was running, paused and slowly stopped. Number 5 also halted his actions. Captain George and the others looked around. "What's happening? What is this light?" As they wondered, they suddenly felt intense pain, and some soldiers began to scream. "Ah! My body!" Everyone, enduring the pain, looked around in panic, and their eyes widened in shock. Under the faint light, everything on their bodies began to disappear. Clothes, guns, even flesh, everything disintegrated into particles, which then vanished into nothingness. Witnessing this horrifying scene, no one could remain calm, and fear filled their eyes. "What is this? Is it you? How is this possible?" Suddenly, Captain Kenny turned, glaring at the boy in the distance. "How are you doing this? What is this light? What kind of ability is this?" He couldn't believe it, and neither could the others. "What are these lights? Is this one of Number 37's abilities? How could this be?" In a frenzy, someone fired at Syd, but it was useless. Moreover, both Number 1 and Number 5 began to disintegrate. Even though red energy surged from Number 5, it couldn't stop the disintegration. Number 1's metallic body also began to disintegrate bit by bit. This was an ability they had never seen before. A Class 5 ability? Or? Fear filled everyone's faces. Unfortunately, no matter how they reacted, their fate was sealed. Particles filled the air as they began to disintegrate. Soon, people started to collapse and die. "No!" In his final moments, Captain Kenny roared in unwillingness. "I don't want to die, no." He began to babble incoherently, his mind breaking down in despair and anger. Why resist? Why not come back to the lab with us? Why no? With a final scream of despair, he disintegrated into particles and vanished. At the same time, Captain George met the same fate, his face full of terror. Despair consumed him as he pleaded, "Spare me! Spare me!" Number 37. please." But before he could finish, he too disintegrated into particles, completely disappearing. The dozen soldiers, including the observing bloodhound, followed suit. Only the 5 sentinel spiders, number 1 and number 5, remained. But the sentinel spiders didn't last long, their black bodies cracking and disintegrating into countless particles, disappearing without a trace. As for number 1 and number 5, Syd's cold gaze turned towards them. End of chapter. Chapter 50. Chapter 50. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Number 5 was enveloped in red energy, trying to resist the disintegration caused by the light. To his credit, it did help somewhat. The disintegration slowed down a bit. However, the effect was minimal. As the red energy shielding him was being broken down, his body began to come into contact with the light, causing his flesh to disintegrate into particles. Simultaneously, his rapid healing tried to counteract this effect, creating a brief stalemate. Unfortunately for him, the disintegration outpaced his healing. The balance tilted towards destruction. Number 5 stared in disbelief at the boy in the distance. Massive amounts of energy surged around Syd, causing his black clothes to flutter dramatically, giving him an ethereal appearance as if he could take flight at any moment. An aura of terror and light emanated from him, seemingly capable of warding off anyone attempting to approach. Number 5 struggled to extend his right hand, stepping towards the boy in a bid to stop him. But under the enveloping light, all his efforts were in vain. His flesh began to vanish, exposing his white bones. On the other side, number 1 fared no better, if not worse. Despite his rocky metallic body being incredibly resilient, it too was unwaveringly disintegrating. In a short span, most of it had vanished, revealing large areas of bone. Yellow blood flowed, and his still beating heart could be seen faintly. With a groan of anger and unwillingness, his entire body collapsed to the ground. Bang! A few seconds later, his massive frame also turned into particles. Number 5 extended his skeletal right hand, trying to grasp something, but his movement froze in place. As he fell to the ground, his body rapidly disintegrated. At that moment, everything around them vanished. The light gradually dimmed, and the black robes around Syd's body settled down. When everything calmed, the sight was eerily silent, and nothing remained where those people had been. Silent, terrifying. Syd glanced at the completely vanished people and felt the depletion of light energy within him, making him somewhat helpless. The power of sunshine was immense, but the consumption was equally exaggerated. Just one use, and his light energy was nearly exhausted. Luckily, the sunlight above quickly restored his light energy. Otherwise, he wouldn't know what to do next. Apart from the issue of insufficient light energy, he noticed another problem with using sunshine this time. Number 5's red energy could slightly block the power of sunshine, and his healing ability delayed the disintegration significantly. Number 1 also disintegrated slower than ordinary people when his metallic body was targeted. It seems sunshine needs to be improved, Syd thought, shaking his head. Although sunshine had the essence of an Omega-level ability, it was only at level 2, so its strength was somewhat lacking. For it to have reached this level of power was already impressive. If it were at level 5, those people wouldn't last a second before turning into particles and vanishing into thin air. Syd glanced at the experience bar for sunshine, looking forward to its performance at level 3. At that moment, Venom suddenly emerged from his right hand. Syd, you. Venom's small head, full of teeth, gaped wide as if it could swallow a basketball. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. The boy before him seemed godlike. "Don't talk," Syd said, not paying attention to Venom for now, and instead scanned the sky. During the use of sunshine, he had sensed something in the sky being obliterated by the light. Could it be drones? Syd frowned and, sensing the slightly recovered energy within him, began searching the area. 10 minutes later, he reached the rooftop of an abandoned building. Seeing the uncollected equipment on the ground, Syd frowned deeply. Is anyone else here? Standing on the rooftop, he scanned the surroundings but found no suspicious individuals. It seems they ran away. He turned to Venom. Venom, Can you sense anyone suspicious nearby? Venom shook his head. Forget it. Syd frowned and then relaxed. It seemed those people couldn't be found. Searching wasn't his strength. Instead of wasting time, he should focus on improving Sunshine's level and unlocking progress. If Sunshine's level increased and the unlocking progress reached 100%, he would have more confidence even in the face of danger. Syd turned and left the abandoned building. As he walked, he pondered, although I didn't deal with everyone, it was still a relief. Thinking of the detestable Captain George and Captain Kenny, he smiled slightly. Soon, there will be that experimental base. Syd's eyes gleamed with determination. He hadn't forgotten who the real mastermind behind the constant hunts was. If he had enough power, he would have destroyed it already. As he was lost in thought, Venom couldn't hold back any longer. Recalling the recent events, he still felt a surge of shock. What kind of power was that? Unbelievable. It was like the power of a god. Terrifying. Looking at Syd, he felt that his host seemed shrouded in mystery, filled with an aura of the unknown. Suddenly, Venom remembered something and said, Syd, you told me a few days ago that the sunshine distortion was an illusion. He also remembered teasing Syd recently, saying that the light emanating from him made him look like a light bulb. It turns out it wasn't a light bulb but such a terrifying power? Venom was stunned. Facing number 1 and number 5 initially, even he felt despair, thinking it was over. But, unexpectedly, the moment the light enveloped everything, he felt suffocated. That power, capable of destroying everything, made him feel like he was truly seeing a god. Casually obliterating everything, like a deity. The more he thought about it, the more shocked he felt. It was your illusion. Seeing Venom's naive little head, Syd casually responded. As they conversed, about a kilometer away, 3 people were running frantically. Pant, pant. Warden Marco ran desperately. At this moment, he covered his mouth with his hand. His eyes filled with terror, not daring to stop. The other 2 soldiers were in similar states, their eyes filled with fear, their minds in chaos, nearly driven insane. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. End of chapter. Chapter 51. Chapter 51. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Light destroyed everything. Recalling not long ago, under the light, Captain George and his men had no resistance and were all turned to ash. Warden Marco and the others couldn't help but show fear in their eyes. What was that? Power of number 37? How could there be such power? Warden Marco felt a chill. The other 2 soldiers didn't fare much better. At this moment, their hearts were filled only with fear, deeply terrified by that power. Is that a power humans can possess? It was simply godlike. A deep shadow was left in their hearts. From now on, whenever someone mentioned mutants, they would involuntarily think of that boy and feel fear. That power that destroyed everything. After running for a while longer, when they couldn't sustain it anymore, they finally stopped. Their hearts beating rapidly, they gasped for a while before calming down, their terror also slowly subsiding. After regaining some composure, the slightly older soldier Hyro asked while panting, Marco, what do we do now? Captain George and the others. They're all dead. He swallowed in fear. Warden Marco took a deep breath, glanced at them and said, report this to Base Commander Alessandro quickly. Let's hurry and get a car back to the base to avoid being chased by that monster. Upon hearing this, the 2 soldiers also became terrified, hurriedly running to the nearby road, anxiously trying to hail a car. More than half an hour later, they returned to Base 23 by car. With hurried steps, they came to Base Commander Alessandro's office, and Marco knocked urgently on the door. Come in. The 3 hurried inside. Noticing the 3, especially Marco among them, Alessandro felt puzzled. Marco, weren't you with George to capture number 37? How come? Did you capture him? He asked with interest, appearing somewhat spirited. It had been a while without capturing that kid. Now that they had, it was still something to be happy about. However, just as he finished speaking, he noticed something unusual. Marco and the other 2, who were previously somewhat normal, instantly turned pale with fear on their faces, as if they had thought of something terrifying. "What happened to you?" Alessandro asked in confusion. Marco replied in fear, "Sir, Captain George and the others, they're dead." The calm-faced Alessandro's eyes widened instantly. He stood up and asked, "What did you say, dead? How could they be dead?" The three began to explain. After listening to their account, Base Commander Alessandro said in disbelief, "What, light destroyed everything? George and the others all died under the light, turning to dust?" Alessandro was full of doubt and disbelief. He thought, these three must be mad, or they were playing a joke on him. Otherwise, how could they say something so outrageous? "Commander Alessandro, I swear to God it's true." Marco's face was serious. "We saw the light destroy everything. Even number 1 and number 5 were no exception. They all died under the power of number 37. Seeing the three still fearful, Alessandro was shocked. Really? The kid he never took seriously, thinking a few abilities were not threatening, actually had such power? So, what exactly was that light? He couldn't help but feel curious and intrigued, wanting to find out what power that kid possessed. At this moment, Alessandro frowned and asked, "What about number 1's pulse interference? Number 1 didn't have time to use it?" Warden Marco shook his head and replied, "The pulse interference failed." "What?" Alessandro was even more shocked. His face darkened. That kid hid too deeply. Is this his full power? What a cunning little devil. At this moment, he wished he could capture that kid immediately and put him on the experimental table for research. What was that light? How could it have such power? And why could number 37 resist number 1's pulse interference? All these questions puzzled Alessandro. As for the capture, it seemed it needed careful planning. With the mysterious power that kid had, it seemed impossible to take him down easily. It would require a significant price, at least sending over 100 people to besiege him. Whether it could succeed, he still had some confidence. No matter how unbelievable the power that kid had, he was still human. As long as he was human, he could be dealt with. The opponent would eventually run out of energy. Kenny's earlier speculation might not be wrong. The opponent surely had limits, and now they had data on his power range. With enough people, they could definitely wear him down. Alessandro thought confidently. At this moment, he couldn't wait to start the next capture. However, it still needed careful planning, and mobilizing the troops would take some time. 2 hours later, an uninvited guest arrived outside Base 23. By a big tree, a fully armed soldier was just passing by when a blue figure swung down from the tree branch. With a swift and powerful kick, the soldier was knocked out instantly, almost without making a sound. Mystique Raven smiled, her skin turning layer by layer until she transformed into the soldier lying on the ground. Picking up the soldier, Raven agilely climbed the tree, snapped the soldier's neck with a click, and placed him on the branch. After searching for some identity information, Raven jumped down from the tree silently, as agile as a cat. Then, she began patrolling. Over an hour later, Raven roughly figured out the situation and focused on a soldier. This person was one of the 2 soldiers who witnessed the battle not long ago. According to the information from the warden and prisoners, he was one of the 3 survivors. Raven's eyes showed doubt. What happened? How did only 3 survive? Based on the information she gathered, many went out to capture that mutant boy, including 2 heavyweights. Number 1 and number 5. Thinking about these 2, even Mystique felt a chill. She could hardly believe how the mutant boy survived, even killed them. Super speed healing, energy impact, body metallization, strength enhancement, pulse interference, etc. With such strong abilities, how could they be killed? Did that mutant kid have such power? At this moment, Raven was filled with deep confusion and disbelief. Naturally, she focused on this soldier, wanting to find out the truth from him. End of chapter. Chapter 51. Chapter 51. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Light destroyed everything. Recalling not long ago, under the light, Captain George and his men had no resistance and were all turned to ash. Warden Marco and the others couldn't help but show fear in their eyes. What was that? Power of number 37? How could there be such power? Warden Marco felt a chill. The other two soldiers didn't fare much better. At this moment, their hearts were filled only with fear, deeply terrified by that power. Is that a power humans can possess? It was simply godlike. A deep shadow was left in their hearts. From now on, whenever someone mentioned mutants, they would involuntarily think of that boy and feel fear. That power that destroyed everything. After running for a while longer, when they couldn't sustain it anymore, they finally stopped. Their hearts beating rapidly, they gasped for a while before calming down, their terror also slowly subsiding. After regaining some composure, the slightly older soldier Hyro asked while panting, "Marco, what do we do now?" Captain George and the others. "They're all dead." He swallowed in fear. Warden Marco took a deep breath, glanced at them, and said, "Report this to Base Commander Alessandro quickly. Let's hurry and get a car back to the base to avoid being chased by that monster." Upon hearing this, the two soldiers also became terrified, hurriedly running to the nearby road, anxiously trying to hail a car. More than half an hour later, they returned to Base 23 by car. With hurried steps, they came to Base Commander Alessandro's office, and Marco knocked urgently on the door. "Come in." The three hurried inside. Noticing the three, especially Marco among them, Alessandro felt puzzled. "Marco, weren't you with George to capture number 37? How come? Did you capture him?" he asked with interest, appearing somewhat spirited. It had been a while without capturing that kid. Now that they had, it was still something to be happy about. However, just as he finished speaking, he noticed something unusual. Marco and the other two, who were previously somewhat normal, instantly turned pale with fear on their faces, as if they had thought of something terrifying. "What happened to you?" Alessandro asked in confusion. Marco replied in fear, "Sir, Captain George and the others. They're dead." The calm-faced Alessandro's eyes widened instantly. He stood up and asked, "What did you say, dead? How could they be dead?" The three began to explain. After listening to their account, Base Commander Alessandro said in disbelief, "What, light destroyed everything? George and the others all died under the light, turning to dust?" Alessandro was full of doubt and disbelief. He thought, these three must be mad, or they were playing a joke on him. Otherwise, how could they say something so outrageous? "Commander Alessandro, I swear to God it's true." Marco's face was serious. "We saw the light destroy everything. Even number 1 and number 5 were no exception. They all died under the power of number 37. Seeing the three still fearful, Alessandro was shocked. Really? The kid he never took seriously, thinking a few abilities were not threatening, actually had such power? So, what exactly was that light? He couldn't help but feel curious and intrigued, wanting to find out what power that kid possessed. At this moment, Alessandro frowned and asked, "What about number 1's pulse interference? Number 1 didn't have time to use it?" Warden Marco shook his head and replied, "The pulse interference failed." "What?" Alessandro was even more shocked. His face darkened. That kid hid too deeply. Is this his full power? What a cunning little devil. At this moment, he wished he could capture that kid immediately and put him on the experimental table for research. What was that light? How could it have such power? And why could number 37 resist number 1's pulse interference? All these questions puzzled Alessandro. As for the capture, it seemed it needed careful planning. With the mysterious power that kid had, it seemed impossible to take him down easily. It would require a significant price, at least sending over 100 people to besiege him. Whether it could succeed, he still had some confidence. No matter how unbelievable the power that kid had, he was still human. As long as he was human, he could be dealt with. The opponent would eventually run out of energy. Kenny's earlier speculation might not be wrong. The opponent surely had limits, and now they had data on his power range. With enough people, they could definitely wear him down. Alessandro thought confidently. At this moment, he couldn't wait to start the next capture. However, it still needed careful planning, and mobilizing the troops would take some time. 2 hours later, an uninvited guest arrived outside Base 23. By a big tree, a fully armed soldier was just passing by when a blue figure swung down from the tree branch. With a swift and powerful kick, the soldier was knocked out instantly, almost without making a sound. Mystique Raven smiled, her skin turning layer by layer until she transformed into the soldier lying on the ground. Picking up the soldier, Raven agilely climbed the tree, snapped the soldier's neck with a click, and placed him on the branch. After searching for some identity information, Raven jumped down from the tree silently, as agile as a cat. Then, she began patrolling. Over an hour later, Raven roughly figured out the situation and focused on a soldier. This person was one of the 2 soldiers who witnessed the battle not long ago. According to the information from the warden and prisoners, he was one of the 3 survivors. Raven's eyes showed doubt. What happened? How did only 3 survive? Based on the information she gathered, many went out to capture that mutant boy, including 2 heavyweights. Number 1 and Number 5. Thinking about these 2, even Mystique felt a chill. She could hardly believe how the mutant boy survived, even killed them. Super speed healing, energy impact, body metallization, strength enhancement, pulse interference, etc. With such strong abilities, how could they be killed? Did that mutant kid have such power? At this moment, Raven was filled with deep confusion and disbelief. Naturally, she focused on this soldier, wanting to find out the truth from him. End of chapter. Chapter 52. Chapter 52. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Ugh. After a brief struggle, Raven covered his mouth and dragged him into a room. Tell me about the battle against that mutant kid. Mystique began her interrogation. Hyro initially didn't want to answer, but under Mystique's methods, he painfully started to talk. Mystique listened, puzzled, while taking out a recording pen to record the soldier's account, intending to let Eric hear it later. Soon, she noticed that as he recalled, the soldier named Hyro's face was filled with fear. He was terrifying. We thought the battle was foolproof, especially with Number 1 and Number 5 there. But he recounted how Number 5 made a move, using an energy blast, only to be effortlessly knocked away by the boy. As he continued, Mystique's face showed surprise. This mutant kid seemed unexpectedly strong? When Hyro mentioned that Number 1's pulse interference had no effect on the boy, Mystique was stunned. Based on her earlier information, Number 1's pulse interference was very strong. It was because of this that she didn't dare to easily enter this experimental base or sneak into their ranks, fearing the pulse interference would nullify her shape-shifting abilities. But now, this soldier told her that Number 1's pulse interference failed? It failed against that mutant kid. This mutant kid. At this moment, Mystique's yellow pupils were filled with astonishment. Meanwhile, Hyro's face was full of fear. Just when I thought this was almost the kid's limit, panting, he was so terrified he could barely speak. What did he do? Mystique asked in confusion. What could make this soldier so scared? Hyro fearfully muttered. The light destroyed everything, including Number 1 and Number 5. They all died in the light unleashed by Number 37. The power of that light was unstoppable, unlike anything a human could possess, like a god's power. They all died, all turned to ash under the light. Haha. As he spoke, he became hysterical, seemingly driven mad by fear. Listening to his account, Mystique was filled with shock. Light. What kind of light has such power? All dead. At this moment, she was filled with confusion, not understanding what kind of light the soldier was talking about that had such terrifying power. Just as she was about to ask for more details, an alarm sounded within the experimental base, indicating an intruder. Mystique frowned, knowing she couldn't continue. With a snap, she dealt with the soldier named Hyro. At this moment, the 23rd base was in chaos, with soldiers searching for the intruder. Experienced in infiltration and escape, Mystique easily transformed into someone else and slipped out of the base. By the time the base personnel realized, it was too late. After escaping the experimental base, Raven took a deep look at the distant base. She had intended to stay at the base to gather more information about the mutant boy, such as his parents' identities, hoping to find something useful, but not this time, maybe next time. Raven shook her head and left with curiosity about the mutant boy. As she left the base, the prisoners inside were also talking. Someone sneaked in? The base is really going downhill, huh? One prisoner sneered. To be honest, someone sneaking into the experimental base wasn't the most shocking thing to them. The most shocking thing was what they had heard not long ago. Those who went to capture number 37, including number 1 and number 5, were all dead. This news was as shocking as experiencing a magnitude 9 earthquake. Those were number 5 with self-healing abilities and number 1 with pulse interference and other powers. Previously, they had been gloating and pitying. Some even bet on whether number 37 would be brought back with broken limbs or dead, not one thinking he would escape. But now, they heard that number 1 and number 5 were all killed by number 37? Every prisoner was stunned. I suspect I heard wrong. How did he do it? Could it be that number 37 can really escape the base's capture? Time passed, and after half an hour, Raven, holding the recording pen, prepared to return to the Brotherhood of Mutants. However, to her surprise, she encountered 3 interesting individuals on the way. Hiding in a concealed corner, Raven quietly observed the 3 not far away. 1 man and 2 women, all wearing black battlesuits with an X emblem. One of the women had white hair and blue eyes, with slightly dark skin, unmistakably Storm. The other had red hair, with a uniquely charming appearance, Phoenix Jean. As for the man, he wore black glasses, clearly Cyclops Scott. Ororo, Jean, Scott? Raven was surprised. Suddenly, Jean, walking on the street, stopped. Jean, what's wrong? Cyclops Scott turned to ask. Phoenix gestured for him to stay quiet, and then looked to the right. I sensed you, Jean said. Raven frowned, knowing Jean wasn't bluffing. She slowly walked out. Mystique? Scott and Aurora were surprised, then became alert. Though Mystique was also a mutant, she was a member of the Brotherhood of Mutants, and their relationship wasn't good. What are you doing here? Scott asked warily. What are you doing here? Mystique retorted. Without waiting for their answer, Raven quickly guessed the reason and smiled. You're also here for that mutant kid, aren't you? To save him, she laughed. Scott frowned. Seeing their expressions, Raven chuckled and said, Then you're a step too late. What? Scott's face changed, sensing something wrong. That kid, could he? Knowing what they were thinking, Raven raised an eyebrow and said, He's fine. In fact, he's exceeded your expectations. Knowing it was futile to escape easily with Jean's mental powers around, Raven candidly explained. End of chapter. Chapter 53. Chapter 53. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. Not injured? Unexpected? Scott and the others looked at each other in surprise. What do you mean, unexpected? Scott asked, puzzled. Raven smiled slightly and said something astonishing. That kid is terrifyingly strong. Everyone sent to capture him died at his hands. Among them were 2 powerful mutants. One with super speed healing and energy blasts, the other with pulse interference. After detailing the abilities of these 2 individuals, Raven smiled. But these 2 powerful mutants also died at the hands of that boy. Hearing Mystique's explanation, Jean and the others were shocked. Such powerful mutants, all dead? How did they die? Storm's blue eyes were full of confusion. The next second, Mystique Raven gave an answer that left them stunned. They died under the light, in the light released by that boy. They all died. What? All died in the light? Scott and the others were shocked. What light? What kind of light can kill such powerful mutants? Scott asked in confusion. That I don't know. Raven smiled. Scott turned to Jean. Jean, is she telling the truth? She's not lying, Jean said, using her telepathy. Scott and Storm were visibly surprised and deeply puzzled. At that moment, they couldn't help but want to see that light for themselves. What kind of light could kill 2 powerful mutants? Where is he now? Scott inquired. I don't know. Raven shook her head and then said, Okay, can I leave now? Scott hesitated for a moment, knowing there was no point in keeping Mystique, so he nodded. Raven gave them one last look and left, intending to return to the Brotherhood of Mutants and report the situation to Eric. After her silhouette disappeared, Storm spoke. What should we do now? Let's report this to the professor, Scott said. He took out his phone and called Professor X. Soon, the call connected. Scott, did you find him? Professor X's voice came from the other end. Scott glanced at Jean and the others and said, Professor, we? He then recounted their encounter with Mystique and what she had told them. The boy used light to kill all those who were hunting him? Professor X frowned, focusing on the light. What kind of mutant ability is so powerful? At that moment, not only were Scott and the others surprised, puzzled, and curious, but he was also eager to meet that boy. While he instructed Scott to continue searching for the boy, a storm was brewing online. Since the host Irina announced that the government would deploy a secret weapon to capture the mutant boy, countless netizens had been following her updates. At this moment, the internet was flooded with comments urging her for news. Irina, have they caught him yet? What is the secret weapon? Give us the latest updates. The flood of comments made Irina break into a cold sweat, feeling a bit panicked. According to the latest information she had received, the operation had failed. Even the secret weapon prepared had died at the hands of that boy. With all this happening, how was she supposed to respond to the netizens? At this moment, besides disbelief, she felt a deep regret. If she had known, she wouldn't have made such bold statements about the secret weapon ensuring the boy's capture. What should she do now? Should she tell the truth? While she was at a loss, her boss called. What? Tell the truth? Irina said in surprise. On the other end, her boss's calm voice continued. This matter cannot be hidden. It's better to say it sooner to minimize the impact. But try to keep it brief and not damage the government's credibility too much. Hearing this, Irina felt relieved and smiled. Don't worry, boss, I'll handle it. After hanging up, she immediately started preparing her script. An hour and a half later, the highly anticipated live broadcast began. Under the spotlight, Irina, dressed in a bright red dress, looked radiant and captivating. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Irina. With a sweet smile, Irina said. Today, I'm here to tell you the outcome of the recent operation to capture the mutant boy. Hearing her words, whether viewers harbored ill will towards mutants or were just curious, all eyes were filled with anticipation. Finally, there's an outcome. They succeeded, right? When will the mutant fugitive be shown? With the secret weapon, that mutant kid must have been captured, no doubt. When will the trial for that fugitive be? Viewers buzzed with discussion, eagerly awaiting Irina's announcement. However, the next second, they heard an answer that left them stunned. Dear viewers, I'm sorry to say that this operation failed. Irina sighed. At those words, countless expressions froze, especially those who had been certain the mutant fugitive would be caught and tried. They were now incredulous. Soon, curses erupted from the viewers. Shit, are the authorities all useless? They couldn't catch one person. What happened to the secret weapon? Even with a secret weapon, they couldn't catch a mutant. Trash. Amidst the overwhelming criticism, questioning how the authorities couldn't catch one mutant kid, Irina offered an explanation. Sighing heavily, she said, It's not as you think. The authorities really tried their best. That mutant was just too difficult to handle. After a brief hesitation, she said something that seemed unbelievable to everyone watching. She slowly said, that mutant boy used the power of light to eliminate everyone hunting him, including the secret weapon. At those words, the many viewers watching the live broadcast were stunned. Light? The boy used light to eliminate everyone hunting him? At that moment, everyone was both shocked and incredulous. End of chapter. Chapter 54. Chapter 54. Check out my P at Trian for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. How could this be possible? Many people didn't believe the result, thinking Irina was deceiving them. Voices of doubt arose. What light? How could it be that powerful? Exactly, we don't believe it. Under the spotlight. Knowing there would be skepticism, Irina spoke heavily. This is true. I take legal responsibility for my words. You can report and verify the facts. Hearing Irina's statement, even the most skeptical viewers had to believe it, though they were filled with disbelief. What kind of light could eliminate all the pursuers? It was just too unbelievable. Confusion filled everyone's hearts. At this moment, Irina continued, "Dear viewers, rest assured, our program team will follow up on this matter. Soon, everyone will know the full story." She smiled. "You need not worry too much. This time, the mutant boy escaped by luck. Our department was careless. After all, everyone can have a moment of carelessness. The next operation will definitely capture him." Her words eased the audience's emotions a bit, and they began to look forward to the next capture attempt success. They also hoped for another live broadcast to see what the so-called light was all about. While the audience was buzzing with discussion, some mutants who were closely following Irina also noticed this live broadcast. On a secluded street, Logan and his companions stopped searching, looking at each other. "This kid." Logan couldn't help but sigh. Otto laughed. "Looks like we don't need to find him. He solved the problem himself. Quite impressive." Chris and Valentine nodded in agreement. At this moment, besides being surprised that Syd eliminated those who were hunting him, they were also puzzled about one thing. Light? Does Syd have the ability to emit light? Why didn't anyone know? At this moment, they were both astonished and confused. Additionally, they were worried about Irina's mention of the next capture attempt. It's clear that the next operation would be even bigger, and Syd's chances of escape would be lower. A mere mutant repeatedly embarrassing the government departments. They wouldn't rest until he's captured. Understanding this, Logan and the others' happiness quickly faded, replaced by worry for Syd. While they were worried about Syd, Magneto was also watching the live broadcast at the Brotherhood of Mutants headquarters. Eric's eyes showed astonishment. "Light. Does that boy have other abilities?" After a while, Raven returned. As soon as she arrived, Mystique smiled. "Eric, I've got some useful information about that mutant boy you're interested in." Eric immediately became interested. Then, he saw Raven take out a black recording pen. As she played the recording, Raven recounted her infiltration of the base and the information she obtained. When the recording pen played Hyro's description of the light destroying everything, even Eric was visibly moved. Hyro's voice kept playing. "The light destroyed everything. The power of that light is unstoppable, unlike anything a human could possess, like a god's power. They're all dead, all turned to ash under the light. Haha." The recording's detailed content moved Eric deeply, more so than Irina's vague words in the live broadcast. The light Irina mentioned had such great power. Despite getting more detailed information, his astonishment and confusion didn't lessen but rather increased. What kind of light was it to be so terrifying? Terrifying enough that even from the voice, it was clear the soldier's mind had been affected. After a long silence, Eric said solemnly, "Find that boy. Raven, take more people with you, and find him." Raven nodded. While the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants were taking action, Syd Castell was diligently practicing Sunshine. Sunshine Experience +1. Sunshine Experience +1. Ability. Sunshine, 27/500, Level 2. At this moment, Venom's small head emerged from his right hand. "Syd, what exactly are you doing?" Venom asked, puzzled. He was a bit confused. Since meeting Syd, he had been practicing his superpowers continuously without using them for actual combat. It looked strange. What was the use of this practice? He pondered. Was it to become more proficient with his superpowers, attempting more precise control? Syd glanced at him and casually said, "I'm practicing my superpowers. You know, superpowers need practice. If not practiced, they get rusty." "Really?" Venom was puzzled. While chatting with Venom, Syd glanced at the estimated lifespan on the panel. Age, 16, remaining lifespan, 90 days. Phew. Syd let out a slight sigh of relief. His internal photon energy had increased significantly, finally extending his lifespan to a barely sufficient level, avoiding sudden death. As long as the increase continued and more abilities were unlocked, he would eventually overcome the various cancers in his body. As night fell, the progress of Sunshine had improved considerably. Ability: Sunshine, 89/500, Level 2. Looking at the progress on the panel, Syd hesitated. This is too slow, he thought. It would take several more days to level up Sunshine to Level 3. He was hesitating whether to first improve the unlocking progress to gain new abilities. After a while, Syd shook his head. He couldn't resist continuing to improve Sunshine. At Level 3, Sunshine's range would be greatly enhanced, making him better prepared for various situations. Even the power and intensity of Sunshine would increase significantly. If Sunshine had been at Level 3 earlier, Number 5 and Number 1 would have died even faster. Time flew by, and 6 days passed. Using Venom's sensing abilities, Syd successfully evaded some trackers. This afternoon, Sunshine finally reached a critical point. Under the warm sunlight, Syd began his final practice. A prompt sounded. Ability: Sunshine, 0/1000, Level 3. The next second, Syd's body began to change. A familiar warmth appeared, rapidly transforming his body. End of chapter. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Thank you for your support. As the warm flow coursed through him, Syd felt his cells undergoing some changes. At this moment, Venom, who was in Syd's right hand, was startled. A sense of threat swept over him, making him instinctively crawl out of Syd's hand. The black liquid wriggled. What's happening? Syd's body. Just a moment ago, Venom felt Syd's body undergoing an inexplicable change, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. When the sense of threat subsided, Venom crawled back into Syd's right hand. Before he could ask what had happened, he immediately noticed a difference. A much more comfortable feeling washed over him, and Venom felt his weakened body, from splitting, rapidly recovering. Venom was stunned. Syd, what happened to you? He asked, confused. He felt more and more baffled by Syd. Everything about Syd was puzzling to him. Syd didn't answer him and instead began testing his abilities. As the light energy within him decreased, the sunlight within 75 meters slightly distorted. Syd frowned slightly. It only improved this much? Feeling a bit disappointed, he shook his head and consoled himself. Never mind, it's still pretty good. Just enough. As his other abilities upgraded and his internal light energy increased, the range of Sunshine would also expand. Overall, it was sufficient. Besides the significant increase in the range of Sunshine, he also noticed changes in his internal light energy. Under the sunlight, Syd quietly waited for his internal light energy to recover. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Feeling the light energy within him, Syd roughly estimated. A Level 3 ability can be used about 50 times, while Level 2 can be used over 100 times. Overall, it was just enough. Of course, delving deeper, it was still insufficient. Sunshine has upgraded, so I can now focus on the unlock progress. Syd's eyes filled with anticipation. Whether it was the potential floating and flying ability or the possible changes upon reaching 100% mimicry, he was eagerly looking forward to it. Additionally, the more abilities awakened, the more light energy his body would have, creating a positive feedback loop. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. The energy points continuously increased. While Syd was collecting light energy, Venom was feeling suspicious. Earlier, he sensed the sunlight above him changing, thinking Syd was about to use that terrifying ability, causing him to shrink back into his hand. After waiting for a while without seeing the terrifying light appear, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was a bit puzzled. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination, but compared to last time, the distortion range of the sunlight seemed to have increased by 2 or 3 times. Was it just my imagination? Venom muttered. While he was puzzled, he saw Syd stop practicing his ability and turn to face the sunlight. Venom immediately guessed what Syd was doing. Is he absorbing sunlight to recover energy and stamina? In amazement, he watched as Syd remained motionless, basking in the sun for an entire afternoon. Seeing Syd's increasingly perplexing actions, Venom found humans more and more incomprehensible. Are all human behaviors this strange? Is it necessary to bask in the sun for an entire afternoon? Shouldn't he have already recovered his energy and stamina? As the sun completely set, Syd finally stopped sunbathing. He looked at the panel, focusing on the energy points section. Energy points. 5,079. Seeing the 5,000 plus energy points, Syd felt quite good. He glanced at the unlock progress. Unlock progress. 80%. Syd focused, allocating all his energy points to the unlock progress. In the next second, the unlock progress jumped. Unlock progress. 82%. It only increased by 2%? Syd shook his head. After a brief disappointment, he became excited again. Almost there, by tomorrow it should reach 85%. I wonder what ability I'll gain. And what changes will occur after reaching 100% mimicry, as well as the next mimicry target, Scarlet Witch. Chaos magic. Thinking of chaos magic, his eyes lit up. It is one of the 3 ancient powers in Marvel, possessing the terrifying power to alter reality. Of course, that's only accurate when combined with Scarlet Witch's mutant ability to alter probabilities, making chaos magic truly formidable. Even the original owner of chaos magic didn't possess this power. In short, the abilities present in Scarlet which would keep him busy exploring for a long time. I just hope it doesn't involve the dark god Thor. Syd frowned slightly. Chaos magic has some ties to the dark god Thor, and if he really mimicked it, who knows if it would attract Thor's attention. If it did attract attention, that would be a big problem. That's an ancient god, not easy to deal with. After a while, Syd shook his head, deciding not to dwell on it. He couldn't abandon the unlock progress over a potential threat. Looking at the dim sky, Syd stepped away. Not long after he started walking, Venom in his right hand alerted him. Be careful. Syd frowned, immediately understanding that Venom had sensed trackers again. In recent days, he had noticed many people searching for him. Besides government agents, there were also others with ill intentions. Fortunately, Venom's sensing ability was quite advanced, especially regarding danger. Usually, those people hadn't spotted him before Venom sensed them in advance. Where are they? Syd asked. Behind the wall to your left, Venom replied. Syd moved quietly to the wall and listened. The voices of 2 middle-aged men faintly came from the other side. Damn, where is that kid? If it weren't for the money and the promise of a big reward upon finding him, I wouldn't be wasting my time on this stupid task. A burly man in a blue shirt, Dave, complained. That underground organization's mission is such a hassle. The other man in a white t-shirt responded. Keep your voice down, will you? Do you want everyone to hear? If the target escapes because of you, I'll beat you up. Dave grumbled. What's the big deal? We haven't found him after all this time. No way we'll run into him now. You're overthinking. As they mumbled, Syd paused, stopping his plan to interrogate them. Underground organization? In an instant, he thought of the killed Carl Panna and the escaped speedster. End of chapter. Chapter 56. Chapter 56. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Also check out my website. It has plus 3 extra chapters for free. zalemtranslations.com. Thank you for your support. Not long ago, that guy escaped, probably to report back to his organization, which led to the current situation. Are they planning to cause trouble? Syd frowned, wondering where they got the nerve to come after him. Because of their leader? As he thought about it, Syd quickly left the area. Finding a secluded spot where he could bask in the moonlight, he reminded Venom to stay alert and then fell asleep. Photon energy +1. The night passed uneventfully, and soon it was the next day. It was still a sunny day, with the brilliant sun hanging high, casting its scorching rays. Under the sunlight, Syd was woken by the prompt in his mind. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. As he basked in the sun, he started feeling a bit aimless. After pondering for a while, he decided to study Venom. After a while, under Syd's control, a black suit covered his body. Glancing at the suit, he sighed in relief. Fortunately, it wasn't the kind of transformation where he turned into a venom monster covered in black liquid. Instead, it was a textured black suit, similar to a black-suited Spider-Man or Superman in his black suit, which he didn't mind. It's not bad. At least it can defend against ordinary bullets in a pinch. Syd evaluated. As for sniper rifles and armor-piercing rounds, he didn't hold much hope. Venom's strength wasn't in defense but in recovery. Hearing his evaluation, Venom was a bit dissatisfied. Syd, this is just okay? It's clearly the best. When we combine, we're invincible. Listening to Venom's boast, Syd's mouth twitched. You really haven't experienced the harshness of the world, not knowing what true strength is. There are plenty of terrifying beings on Earth. Syd shook his head. Even he didn't dare claim invincibility, and Venom really needed a reality check. Terrifying beings? Venom was confused, not knowing who these terrifying beings Syd mentioned were. And how did Syd seem to know so much? At this moment, Syd suddenly thought of something and asked, Venom, can you cure cancer? The cancer you humans talk about? Venom was slightly stunned, then laughed. Of course, I can cure it. I can devour the cancer cells in your human body. It's simple for me. Syd's eyes lit up, and he immediately had an idea. However, after hesitating for a while, he couldn't bring himself to let Venom enter his vital organs. Thinking for a moment, he said, Try devouring the cells in my right hand. Venom looked puzzled, not knowing what Syd was up to. The next second, he complied. Then, before Syd could feel excited, Venom suddenly cried out and quickly emerged from his right hand. At the same time, Syd felt a surge of sunshine energy release from his right arm. What's going on? Syd quickly controlled this power and looked at Venom. He was shocked. He noticed that Venom's body seemed to be missing some parts, with residual energy still corroding his tissues. Venom looked terrified and said, Syd, your body's cells. With Venom's explanation, Syd finally understood what had happened. When Venom attempted to devour the cells, as soon as he damaged the cell walls and membranes, a mysterious energy seeped out from the damaged cells. In Venom's perception, the light flashed. This power didn't affect Syd, but for Venom, it was almost like a deadly poison. If he had destroyed too many cells at once, he would have been severely harmed or even killed. Of course, Venom probably sensed something was wrong and stopped in time. Syd frowned. He hadn't expected his cells to be so unusual. It seems those transformations really changed my body's cells significantly. Shaking his head, he gave up on the idea of letting Venom devour his cancer cells. If ordinary cells were this dangerous, he couldn't imagine what the cancer cells had become. Perhaps they were like little monsters? Cthulhu? Syd sighed, thinking, I can only continue to increase my photon energy to suppress them, or hope to acquire a new ability to deal with it. But who knows if the cancer will worsen, and whether he can hold out until then. Syd shook his head, dismissing the thoughts, and turned his attention to the energy points. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. The sun rose higher and higher, reaching its zenith before slowly descending. As evening approached, Syd couldn't help but glance at the panel. Energy points. 10,903. Over 10,000 points, that should be enough. With anticipation in his eyes, the unlock progress flashed rapidly. Unlock progress. 86%. As the unlock progress reached 86%, a prompt sounded immediately. Ability. Flight, unlocked. Ability. Flight. 0/100, level 1. Finally. Syd's mood instantly brightened. Flying. It's one of humanity's dreams. The invention of airplanes was driven by the desire to soar through the skies, and now he possessed this ability, not needing any tools to fly using his own body. Moreover, having the ability to fly would make a significantly different impression on others. Syd eagerly began to test it. Flight experience +1. With a thought, and under Venom's stunned gaze, his body slowly lifted off the ground. 10 centimeters off the ground, half a meter, 1 meter. His black-clad figure floated in the air, exuding an ethereal, mystical aura as the wind blew. From a distance, He seemed like the center of the universe, giving off an impression of being one with everything, almost godlike. His entire demeanor elevated significantly. He seemed divine. This feeling, Syd murmured. Under Venom's stunned gaze, his body slowly ascended. 2 meters. 10 meters. Syd felt inside. The energy consumption for flight was minimal, almost negligible, like a constant state. However, it might be due to the level restriction, but once he exceeded a range of about 10 meters, the photon energy consumption increased. It felt like he was truly using an ability that required energy. Besides these limitations, there was something else that surprised him. At this moment, a prompt kept echoing in his mind. Flight experience +1. Flight experience +1. Flight experience +1. The experience for flight was increasing at an exaggerated rate. End of chapter. Chapter 57. Chapter 57. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Check out my website. It has +3 extra chapters for free. zalemtranslations.com. Thank you for your support. The prompts kept ringing. Flight experience +1. Flight experience +1. Syd was surprised. The speed at which experience was increasing was unexpectedly fast. Even just maintaining the flight state, experience kept increasing without the need for repetitive practice. Most importantly, in the flight state, the photon energy consumption was almost non-existent. This meant that, except for at night, Syd could stay in the flight state continuously, and the speed of experience increase would be unprecedentedly fast. Syd had a feeling that the flight ability might be the first to reach level 5, and it would be the easiest one to upgrade. The benefits brought by this were self-evident. The increase in photon energy alone from the flight upgrades was a huge gain. Especially when it reached level 5, the amount of photon energy it would bring would be unexpectedly high. Syd's eyes filled with anticipation. By then, both the range of sunshine and the endurance of other abilities would likely see a significant boost. Syd pondered, the upgrade direction of flight should be in terms of range and speed, right? From earlier, he felt that the flight speed was extremely slow, almost not even as fast as an average person running. There was also the 10-meter range limitation. Exceeding this range caused the flight's steady state to be lost, leading to a significant consumption of photon energy. It was clear that upgrades to flight should improve these aspects. Suddenly, as Syd was lost in thought, he noticed something strange around him. In the flight state, he vaguely heard ethereal music starting to play. Sacred, solemn, mysterious, ethereal. The music was familiar, reminiscent of the BGM that accompanied Orochi's appearance. As the ethereal sound played, the aura around him elevated even further. The feeling of being one with heaven and earth, one with all things, grew stronger, making him seem godlike. However, the ethereal sound was very faint, barely audible, making this feeling reach a limit without being overwhelming. While he was surprised by his own changes, Venom was already stunned. Syd had inexplicably gained the ability to fly? He couldn't believe it. And this sound. The ethereal sound in his ears made Venom feel solemn, sacred, and mysterious. At the same time, there was an indistinct sense of tension, as if something had appeared, and the ethereal sound was welcoming it. After a while, he finally shook off the faint tension. Venom muttered, "Where is this sound coming from?" He couldn't figure out the source. It seemed to come from everywhere, as if from some unknown place. At this moment, Syd slowly lowered his altitude, descending from the sky to hover a foot above the ground. Flight experience +1. He looked up at the sky. It was already nearing evening, and after testing the flight ability, the sky had almost completely darkened. Unlock progress 86%. Glancing at the panel, Syd thought, I wonder what ability will awaken at 90%. Or at 95%? The energy points collected tomorrow should be enough to push the unlock progress to 90%. Syd's eyes filled with anticipation. While floating cross-legged in the air, Syd listened to the faint ethereal sound around him, grateful for the secluded location. Otherwise, the commotion might have been too much. Flight experience +1. Flight experience +1. While absorbing moonlight, Syd found that absorbing moonlight alone was enough to maintain the flight effect. 2.5 hours later, a prompt sounded in his mind. Ability. Flight. 0/500, Level 2. Taking advantage of the night, Syd immediately began to experiment. 1 meter. 10 meters. 50 meters. In the dark night, Syd looked up at the moon. 50 meters is the limit. Syd was a bit disappointed. Of course, he could still fly higher, but it would consume a lot of photon energy. Flight experience +1. Besides the range, he noticed that the slow speed of floating flight had improved. If it was slower than an average person running before, it now exceeded that. Finally, the speed is somewhat useful, Syd sighed. At least now, the flight speed was faster than his running speed. And this is only level 2. Syd was filled with anticipation. Flight experience +1. Flight experience +1. Nearly 3 hours later, Syd felt sleepy and had to come down from the air. Ability. Flight. 120/500, Level 2. While feeling sleepy, he had tried sleeping in the air but failed. He found that the floating flight state was controlled by thought, and falling asleep muddled his thoughts, making it easy to lose control of the flight, or even fly erratically. Syd shook his head and decided to give up. He instructed Venom to keep watch and then fell asleep. Time passed. The warm sunlight woke Syd up. Photon energy +1. As he woke up, Syd's body immediately floated into the air. Flight experience +1. Flight experience +1. His presence became more intimidating. Gradually, the ethereal sound that made one's scalp tingle appeared faintly. Venom, hidden in Syd's right hand, felt a renewed sense of fear despite hearing it more than once. By the afternoon, Syd stopped floating. Ability. Flight. 0/1000, Level 3. Syd quickly tested and found the range had increased to 200 meters. At the same time, the flight speed had significantly improved, more than twice as fast as a normal person's running speed. Although not extremely fast, it was much faster than an average person. Additionally, because the flight ability had reached level 3, his internal photon energy had increased dramatically. The usage count for level 3 abilities had risen to over 70 times. Flight upgrades quickly. If it reaches levels 4 and 5, the internal energy will likely increase even more. By then, the issue of lacking energy will be greatly alleviated. Furthermore, the range of sunshine had increased to about 82 meters. It had become even more formidable. At this moment, photon energy +1. Syd looked at the energy points. Energy points. 9,983. I wonder if I'll gain a new ability? Curious, Syd invested all his energy points into the unlock progress. The next second, the 86% unlock progress blurred. Unlock progress 89%. Syd frowned, stuck at 89%? He found that breaking through to the next level became increasingly difficult. While the early stages were easy, the later stages had him stuck at each percent for a long time. After thinking for a while, Syd shook his head and stopped pondering. End of chapter. Chapter 58. Chapter 58. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Check out my website. It has plus 3 extra chapters for free. zalemtranslations.com. Thank you for your support. Given the speed at which photon energy is collected, this progress won't take long. By tomorrow, he should have gathered enough. Suddenly, Syd felt something and stopped. He looked into the distance. These people are really annoying. Standing on a tall building, he didn't even need Venom's reminder to see the people gradually approaching. Recently, he had encountered people looking for him more than once. I can sense their malice, Venom said with a grin. I want to bite off their heads. Syd's mouth twitched. He pushed Venom's head away, the long tongue hanging out, and turned his attention to the approaching pursuers. Being chased like this continuously wasn't an option. He needed to teach these people a lesson. Space transfer experience +1. Space transfer experience +1. His figure disappeared from the rooftop and reappeared below. In the distance, 4 burly men were looking around, searching for something. Syd quietly followed them, intending to find their hideout. An hour later, Syd followed the 4 men to a small house. From a distance, he could see the 4 men talking to someone inside the house. Space transfer experience +1. Syd quietly approached and stuck to the window. Observing, he saw 5 people inside, 4 men and 1 woman. He could faintly hear their conversation. The woman in green clothes spoke with disdain. "You guys are useless. You can't even find 1 person. We're reconsidering our cooperation with you." Among the 4 mercenaries, a short, stout, middle-aged man frowned. "You know this mutant is hard to find. If it were that easy, why would you need us?" Ivy Ann sneered, about to say something, when the man beside her interrupted. "Enough, Ivy Ann. The kid is indeed hard to find. Don't make it difficult for them." Seeing Anil shaking his head, Ivy Ann had to stop and change the subject. She laughed coldly. "That little guy is good at hiding. Be thankful you didn't find him, or we'd have shown him the consequences of offending our underground organization." Ah! Before she could finish, she suddenly clutched her chest, her face showing disbelief. Dark particle experience +1. A fist-sized hole appeared in her chest, through which the scenery behind could be seen. The flesh and bones had completely disappeared. Bang, bang, bang. The dark particles continued, piercing several walls before dissipating. Ivy Ann howled in pain. Her face was full of terror and confusion. What happened? Before she could think more, she began vomiting blood and convulsing, rolling on the ground in agony. Blood flowed. Before passing out, she vaguely saw a figure in black clothing. It was him. Ivy Ann was stunned. In the end, her eyes fixed, the last emotions being terror, anger, and unwillingness. Seeing Ivy Ann die miserably, both the underground organization members and the 4 mercenaries were shocked. In unison, the 4 mercenaries drew their guns from their waists. Their eyes locked onto the mysterious figure slowly walking in through the front door. "It's you." At a glance, they recognized who it was. Anger and shock followed. They hadn't done anything to this guy yet, and he had come to them, even killing someone? He wasn't taking them seriously at all. Reflective shield experience +1. The 4 mercenaries were the first to act, with 2 of them trying to fire their guns. Bang! Instantly, 2 screams echoed. The bullets hit an invisible shield in front of Syd and quickly bounced back. The other 2 mercenaries, wary, nearly dropped their guns in shock. This freak could indeed reflect bullets. They were glad they hadn't fired immediately. Syd ignored them and focused on the remaining 4 mutants. Space transfer experience +1. In the next moment, he appeared next to a young man. Divine finger experience +1. Dodge. Unfortunately, despite the shouts from the other 3, it was too late. Syd's finger had already touched the young man. Crack bang. The sound of shattering glass was heard, and the young man was sent flying like a cannonball, crashing into a nearby wall. The wall cracked, followed by the sound of bones breaking. The young man didn't even have time to scream before passing out. Syd was about to move on to the next target when he felt a sharp pain in his head, as if an invisible force was attacking his mind. A mental attack? His gaze instantly turned to a white-skinned, chubby man. Feeling stimulated, Syd's inner power surged uncontrollably, almost exploding. Venom suddenly emerged from his right hand, instantly forming a black mask over his head. Huh? My mental power? Bob was stunned, unable to believe that a mere black liquid could nullify his mental abilities. Syd, however, knew that Venom had exceptionally strong mental resistance. Whether it was magical illusions, dream attacks, or other mental assaults, Venom was almost immune. Syd wasn't surprised that Venom's mask could block mental attacks. What did surprise him was this guy's ability to bypass the reflective shield and use mental attacks. Spiritual light beam experience +1. A blue energy beam shot up from the ground without warning. In an instant, the chubby man screamed as his body exploded into a bloody mess, needing immediate censorship. Reflective shield experience +1. Dark particle experience +1. Dark particle experience +1. Spiritual light beam experience +1. Space transfer experience +1. Divine Finger Experience +1. Facing Syd's relentless attacks, Anil and the others felt despair. They couldn't comprehend how there could be such a powerful mutant. Compared to what was shown in the recent live broadcast, facing him in person was far more terrifying. Maybe, only with a much larger force could they hope to defeat him. As expected, facing Syd's barrage, they all fell in pools of blood. Our leader won't let you go. You can't, Eska. Syd didn't listen to their dying words and sent them away from this world. End of chapter. Chapter 59. Chapter 59. Check out my Patreon for +20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Check out my website. It has +3 extra chapters for free. zalemtranslations.com. Thank you for your support. After finishing everything, Syd slowly turned and left, leaving behind a room full of blood. On the way, Syd pondered whether he should check out that so-called underground organization. As the sun set, the events that had transpired here were quickly discovered. Members of the underground mutant organization and the mercenary organization gathered at the scene. Seeing the carnage inside the house, the 30 or so people present looked grim. Some even bent over and vomited. It was definitely that kid. A tall, burly man in a black jacket with a fierce expression spat on the ground. Damn, he dares to kill our people. The leader of the underground mutant organization, Henrik, had a murderous glint in his eyes. At this moment, a nondescript man from the mercenary team stepped forward. Thomas glared angrily at the members of the underground organization, saying, "This is your fault. If you hadn't insisted on going after that kid, Andy and the others wouldn't have died so horribly." The mercenaries around him were equally upset. The 4 people who died were their comrades, those they had gone through life and death with many times. Now they were suddenly gone, and it was hard for anyone to accept. The underground mutant organization members showed anger. They accepted the task, and now they were being blamed for the deaths? Besides, their own people had died too. Henrik's face turned violent, and he coldly snorted. In the next second, Thomas, who was about to shout something, suddenly froze, instinctively looking down at his body. He saw that he was gradually becoming transparent, like a fading shadow. Thomas reached out, his mouth open. The next moment, a sound like shattering glass echoed. Thomas vanished into thin air, right in front of everyone. Thomas! What's happening? The mercenaries shouted in surprise. The underground mutant organization members wore smug expressions. They murmured among themselves. The leader's power is still as formidable as ever. So terrifying. Even though they had seen it many times, they couldn't help but feel awe and fear. The power to turn someone from solid to nothingness was truly frightening. The leader could do this to others and even himself. In a state of nothingness, no one could touch him. It was as if he was invincible. This was why they were so loyal to the leader and not afraid of that mutant kid. Compared to the kid, their leader was far more terrifying. As for the kid, he wouldn't stand a chance against the leader. The kid dared to offend their underground mutant organization repeatedly. He was seeking death. This time, the kid had thoroughly angered the leader. He was dead for sure. They were already imagining when the leader would go and slaughter the kid. At this moment, the mercenaries' faces changed as they raised their guns to aim at Henrik. But before they could do anything, their bodies also began to turn translucent. In the sunlight, they vanished instantly as if they had never existed. Henrik snorted coldly. "Great job, leader. These guys were dumb." The underground mutant organization members looked at Henrik with admiration. Then, a slim woman in a red dress, with a striking appearance, stepped forward and smiled. "Leader, when are we going to deal with that guy?" Henrik glanced at her and then his face darkened. "Now? I can't wait to kill that brat. How dare he offend our organization?" After a sarcastic remark, he continued, "But we can't go after him immediately. We need to find some allies." Allies? The members of the underground organization were puzzled. Henrik sneered, "There's a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend." Even though he could kill the kid by himself, it would be easier with help. Half an hour later, he contacted a government department, proposing a collaboration. On the other end, there was initial apprehension, but after some consideration, they agreed. Just as Henrik had thought, they also believed that the enemy of their enemy was a friend. They decided to work together to get rid of the mutant who was a thorn in their side. The two sides discussed their plans for a while. During this time, the head of the 23rd Experimental Base, Alessandro, confidently arranged his forces. 100-strong armed team and 3 helicopters for aerial bombardment. Along with the mutants from the underground organization. Alessandro's lips curled into a confident smile. While they were planning, Syd was taking advantage of the evening to add the recently collected energy points to his unlock progress. Unlock progress 89%. Seeing no immediate change, Syd pouted. Flight experience +1. Flight experience +1. The sun rose and set, and soon it was the next dawn. On the roof of a 4-story building. Having just woken up, Syd sat on the edge of the rooftop, occasionally swinging his legs, showing no fear of falling. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Energy points. 1101. Glancing at the energy points, Syd immediately added them to the unlock progress. Unlock progress 90%. Seeing the 90% progress, Syd frowned slightly, still nothing. He was a bit disappointed. Suddenly, he noticed something different. When flying, the ethereal sound around him became clearer, and his aura increased again. While he was surprised, the underground mutant organization and Alessandro had begun searching for him. An hour later, Irina, having received the news, immediately launched another live broadcast. The news quickly garnered widespread attention online. After all, it hadn't been long since the last time. Under the watchful eyes of many, Irina, dressed in a white dress, stood under the spotlight. Netizens started discussing. Hey, why is there another live broadcast? What's happening? Knowing people would be curious, Irina didn't waste time and got straight to the point. Good morning, viewers. I'm your host, Irina. Irina smiled. Today, I bring you good news. Soon, the relevant departments will launch a new operation, and this time, it will be different. That mutant boy who escaped last time won't be able to get away this time. Irina's confident expression and vow surprised the viewers. Can they really catch him? What's giving Irina such confidence? Is the government better prepared this time? Curious. Irina's words restored the viewers' confidence. They believed she wouldn't make baseless claims. Even last time, Irina hadn't been this confident. This indicated that this time, success was assured. At this moment, many people looked excited and expectant, eager to see the mutant boy's defeat and capture soon. As netizens buzzed with discussion, Logan and others, as well as members of the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants, were also reacting to the news. End of chapter. Chapter 60. Chapter 60. Check out my Patreon for plus 20 extra chapters on all my fanfics. For $5. www.patreon.com/Salem. Check out my website. It has plus 3 extra chapters for free. zalemtranslations.com. Thank you for your support. In a dark alley. That kid. Logan frowned and threw away his cigar in frustration. Irina's unprecedentedly confident expression gave him a bad feeling. Not only him, but Chris and the others felt the same. What kind of huge force could make that woman so confident? A chill ran down their spines. They were unsure if Syd could escape this time. Let's see if we can find him and help, Chris sighed. In the government department. A middle-aged man in official uniform suddenly had his blue eyes turn yellow. He was, in fact, Mystique. Raven frowned deeply, murmuring, "This is bad." Flipping through the paper files in her hand, worry filled her eyes. The information indicated that Alessandro, the head of the 23rd Experimental Base, had deployed over 100 armed soldiers for the capture operation. Additionally, the files showed that an underground mutant organization had joined in, especially highlighting the organization's leader. This leader had incredibly powerful abilities. He could turn people within a certain range into nothingness and could make himself intangible. Seeing this information, Mystique's worry deepened. The mutant kid was strong, but he was definitely not a match for this person. let alone 100 soldiers. How could he resist? Mystique flipped through the files, feeling her heart race. The next moment, she took out her phone and urgently reported the situation to Eric. What? Even Eric was shocked upon seeing the information. 100-strong armed team? And, scanning through several pages of the leader's information, Eric's eyes grew heavy. Even he wasn't confident he could defeat this person. It was almost like dealing with the Black King Sebastian Shaw back in the day, evoking a sense of despair. At that moment, he had already lost hope. He clearly remembered that the Sebastian Shaw had the ability to absorb and store any form of energy, including nuclear and kinetic energy from bullets. This made him almost invincible. Every attack only made him stronger. If it weren't for Charles using mental attacks after Eric removed Shaw's helmet, they wouldn't have been able to defeat him. And this Henrik was similarly invincible, possessing equally terrifying abilities. Perhaps only the legendary Omega-level mutants could defeat him? Broly. Eric sighed. If even he couldn't defeat Henrik, how could this young boy possibly stand a chance? He thought soon, he would probably receive news of the boy's death. On the other side, Raven detected the fear and pessimism in Eric's voice. After a moment of silence, she hesitated before sending the information to the X-Men, hoping they could save the child. Wearing sunglasses, Scott, the white-haired Aurora, and the red-haired Jean. This is troublesome, Scott frowned deeply. Looking at the information Mystique sent, both Jean and Aurora, as well as Scott, felt a heavy weight. First, there were the 100 armed soldiers. How could the boy escape such a firepower siege? Surviving would already be a miracle. Not to mention, the leader of the underground mutant organization. Such a troublesome figure made all three of them deeply worried. They couldn't possibly deal with someone like that, could they? If the boy encountered him. Imagining the outcome, the three fell silent. With no other options, they passed the information to Professor X. Looking at the information, Charles frowned tightly. A figure comparable to Sebastian Shaw. If Eric hadn't suddenly removed Shaw's mental defense helmet, allowing him to use mental attacks, they might have been dead long ago. And this child was about to face someone comparable to Shaw? Professor X Charles sighed, seeing no hope. Despite having no hope, both he and Eric sent people to try to save the child. Time passed quickly. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the bright golden sun disappeared, replaced by a gloomy sky. Hoo-hoo. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the damp wind howled, heralding an approaching storm. The sky grew dark. Syd sat on the edge of the rooftop, resting for a while. Just as he was about to leave, something in the distance caught his attention. At the same time, Venom's warning rang out. Be careful. From a distance, Syd saw people in black clothing approaching cautiously, seemingly surrounding him. He could faintly see guns being aimed. Reflective shield experience +1. He also noticed the presence of helicopters. Syd estimated there were at least dozens, maybe over 100 people. Each one was fully armed, equipped with various weapons. Syd frowned slightly. As they got closer, he spotted a tall, burly man in a black jacket making an obscene gesture at him. The burly man wore a vicious smile, shouting, "Kid, you're really here. You dared to offend my organization multiple times. You'll die miserably." Henrik sneered. Outside the soldiers' encirclement, members of the underground mutant organization, who hadn't entered the encirclement, looked on with anticipation. It's happening. Soon, the leader will show his power and make that brat disappear. Every time I think about the leader's power, it terrifies me. That kid will probably be crushed like an ant, right? The excitement wasn't limited to them. Although the operation was swift and covert, it couldn't hide the commotion from the encirclement. From a distance, many onlookers followed the soldiers, watching from afar. Listening closely, they could hear discussions. Are they finally going to catch that mutant fugitive? What a huge operation. He won't escape this time. Boom. Thunder rumbled overhead, dark clouds gathering, the atmosphere heavy. The damp wind howled. Syd sat on the rooftop edge, his black hooded cloak billowing in the wind. His face was obscured by the hood's shadow, making his expression unreadable. Inside the armed encirclement, Colonel Kage, leading the soldiers, smiled. This powerful mutant was about to die by his hands. The thought made him feel pleasure. Under the watchful eyes of many, no one thought the boy could escape. He was destined to die at the soldier's hands. Seeing Colonel Kage preparing to act, Henrik sneered and approached quickly. Boom! On the fourth-floor rooftop, under the dark clouds, the black cloak fluttered in the gloomy wind, as if the boy would be blown away at any moment. He moved. He stepped forward, slowly descending. Then, to everyone's shock, he began to walk in the air, step by step. He walked through the air, then stopped. High above, the boy's golden eyes gazed at them quietly. End of chapter.